the end of it, everyone's coming on, taking a bow.
And it's just kind of funny, well, cheesy, how like they're all just like laughing and jumping and like oh,
Gandalf does that really awkward thing.
Perfect.
It's like
Perfect
it's a bit, like,
acting there, Matt.
It's like, okay, like enough.
He's a very basic character in the books. He's very much supposed to be the pure paragon man. He was chosen by Tolkien to be kind of the counterpoint to Boromir, to be the standard that men are supposed to be aspiring to. And that it was a thematic choice. It degrades the kind of quality of him as a human character, I think, as we talked about, but it was a difference. It was a choice by the author. In the films, they've gone the other way. They've kind of made him more well-rounded, more human, more of a flawed character, so that he can then rise to be that kind of that paragon.
So, do we want to talk about the ghosts?
No. Let's not talk about the ghosts. Let's not talk about the worst thing in the entire trilogy. It's
worst thing in the entire trilogy.
I think so. Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, and welcome back to Fanalysis, The Lord of the Rings. I'm Callan, this is Matt.
Hey everybody, welcome.
Yeah, and this is Evan.
Greetings.
Today talking about film 3, Return of the King, closing out the trilogy from our discussions on the 3. Bigger, better in some ways, kind of holds up to be the one that delivered the big Oscar win. We looked to make sure we were still getting the numbers right. 11 wins, shares its position with Titanic and Ben-Hur. So unbeaten to this day, which is something I think is very much earned by its little cinematic pocket of time.
Yeah, and not just that, but also the only fantasy film, I believe, to ever win Best Picture still to this day as well, which just as a genre thing is still pretty significant, because it's like, fantasy films, I feel, especially at the time, even though these movies were like obviously really, really big hits, having a fantasy film, not only make it to the Oscars, but actually win Best Picture. I mean, that's a big deal, I feel. And I think it really also helped with just the general public zeitgeist of how these films are seen as far as film history goes, because, it's putting them on the map, not just with general audiences and critics, but also with, that sort of Oscar crowd as well. It's kind of rounding, I guess appropriately, third movie, it's kind of rounding out all three sort of spheres of just the general movie genre, which is really something I think that's worth pointing out and also worth celebrating.
It really kind of changed the landscape. I mean, shows like Game of Thrones, for example, wouldn't have really had that opening to enter into the public zeitgeist. I know that kind of worked off the kind of realism of more grittier politics. That kind of rode that from that anyway. But it would not have been something that people in the studio exec environment would have been going, oh yes, let's add that to the pile. Let's get that going. Let's spin this up. Lord of the Rings was what kind of gave that attraction. I mean, we talked about it a bit in the first film's discussion. It was not a project that was, people were eager to make, not least because of the cost involved. But it was that risk factor, the fact that the audiences weren't eager for this kind of film, this kind of story to come out and make into the big picture. And this was really that big,
they had to come through.
That big bell toll of, hey, look, we just won the most Oscars of any film ever, and we've made a ridiculous amount of money. And all these years later, people are still going to be talking about us. It was a real cinematic moment.
I think the doubts were kind of put to rest with the first movie, because that also was the same, coincided with the first Harry Potter movie, which made almost $1 billion.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, no one I think was now caring too much about fantasy. And it was kind of like a fantastical time. Things like Pirates of the Caribbean were kind of fantasy adjacent. You know what I mean? I mean, those were doing really well at the time.
It was an exciting year all around, I think.
It also, I think, solidified in everyone's mind that, Peter Jackson truly is a director that, can, not only you could put his name up with like the greats of his era and nobody will question you as far as just his approach and style goes. It also made him a very, like you were saying, Matt, when the first film came out, I think, his name really also obviously got propelled off of that. But like, this is kind of like, okay, there is absolutely no question now that this guy is the real deal. So it's all fantastic, and it opened him up to have opportunities in the future to make a lot of films that he always wanted to make. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind was his King Kong remake, which he famously wanted to do for most of his life because he was a big fan of the original, back when he was growing up. And now that after he did this trilogy, in fact, there's a lot of crossover between the Lord of the Rings and King Kong as far as like the studio and some of the actors,
the general backstory making of exactly. And it really put New Zealand on the map as well. I mean, not just as a whole industry, but some of the things they were coming out with to make these films, some of the problems they had to solve to make it viable were changing the cinematic background. Being the big one on that we talked about before in the previous discussions was Andy Serkis. You mentioned about King Kong. Things like Planet of the Apes wouldn't have been possible without the technology and the industry that was kind of spun up through the creation of these films. But speaking of, that's kind of leading into the intro scene of the film. Do you want to start talking about the Gollum opening?
Sure. So, like, speaking of Andy Serkis, this is like the first time audiences got to see like his actual face. And I think that wasn't always destined to be the case, because he was originally hired just to be the voice actor, to the point where when they first started shooting these movies, whenever like Sam and Frodo were off doing something, and they needed like a Gollum, they had kind of a temporary stand-in doing some of the stuff for them to shoot the scenes with. And they later were able to work with Andy. But yeah, I mean, talk about like just the part just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. He was hired just to do the voice, you know, and then he ends up doing all this mocap, and then he eventually gets to show his actual face, which was cool.
And it kind of came about from his natural physicality as well. Like he would get throw himself into the role to the point where mocap became kind of it was just an obvious choice when you're showing how he's generating that voice and that personality, and they say, well, this guy's, look what he's doing. This is Gollum. You know, he's embodying that person.
But to his credit, I think he, you know, in this opening sequence, you know, you really do get a taste of just his like. I'm struggling with the language here, because not that mocap isn't true acting, because I think it should be considered that, but just
for sure, a different style. Seeing his acting chops.
That's what I'm trying to get to, like seeing him in like what people would consider, especially then, like a traditional sort of role, and seeing his abilities on screen, you know, first hand, and just seeing his acting chops as they are. And it's very impressive what he does here, because, you know, them finding the ring, and that their his slow descent into madness, like things where he talks about, you know, what he forgets, you know, as time moves on. And then obviously there's a lot of creative visuals. I think a lot of the one that I think sticks with a lot of people is like when he closes his eyes and when he opens them again, it's like his eyes morph and whatnot. Again, not just an impressive effect, but also just it's a very good showcasing of, you know, his abilities as an actor. So I think that's really worth pointing out in this sequence, if nothing else.
I'd like to talk a little bit about this scene, because this movie, more than the middle one, and maybe as much as the first one, I find enjoyable to listen to the director and the writer commentary track for. It's interesting getting to hear their thoughts as sort of just their creative process. This book, maybe more so than the other ones, has more deviations, or I mean, this movie has more deviations from the book. They all deviate to an extent or another, but in this particular one, they make a lot of creative decisions that are different to what Tolkien wrote, for a variety of different reasons. But sometimes, just irrespective of serious changes, it's kind of interesting to hear about like how ideas sort of shift in an organic way. This entire scene wasn't supposed to be in this movie, to the point where I don't really know what their planned opening was going to be. I think this is like a pretty perfect way to open this movie. But this initially was going to be in Two Towers, and specifically, there's a bit where speaking of the things he forgot, it's the bit where Frodo says the name Smeagol to him, and he remembers his name. You might notice in that movie, the camera pans right up to his face, like for like a really long time, as he's like sitting and thinking about the name Smeagol. Like it's a really long time, and that's because there was going to be a cut there where they showed this sequence as he remembered it. For whatever reason, I think they said it was primarily for length reasons. They took it out of there, but it just feels so much out of the second movie and put it into this one. But it just feels like such a nice way to open this movie. And I think the actual scene of the actual hobbits fighting over the ring, I think that wasn't directed by Peter Jackson. A great many scenes weren't actually directed by him, actually, when you look into it. A lot of people kind of like rose to the challenge for
running
it.
second and even
they
third
said at one
units
point
at times.
There's a scene where Peter Jackson said Andy had to direct himself.
I can't
remember which scene it is, but yeah, this was actually directed by his wife. I think it was directed by Fran. So really good scene. Really, it's also funny because the extended cut, apparently, I've not watched them side by side, but they said there was a little too much strangling in there for the MPAA, so they had to shorten it. So a little strangling, not too much strangling, just a little bit less strangling. That's okay. Which is so bizarre. But if you're watching the extended cut, that's the full strangling. So if that's all you've ever seen, you've never been robbed of any strangle.
It's an interesting one because it's very grounded and kind of and human story being told within that small scene, but it's a bit cartoonish in how over the top it is sometimes. Like some of the performances that are being given.
It part of it? I mean, one of them's dragged into the lake by a fish, so that's
Yeah,
pretty
well,
out
of
there.
course,
But
yeah.
also, like,
Oh yeah.
the fact that he's still doing the Gollum-y
Yeah,
voice
it's like,
has always
give
been
it
a
to me,
little bit.
precious.
Yeah,
It's just it's
yeah.
very.
You would expect that to be part of the deterioration and not what it
Yeah,
always sounded like.
but it also
Right.
kind of works. I mean, it's not necessarily a choice I would have made. Like, I would probably say, maybe scale that back a little bit. But I've never felt that, oh god, this is weird, this is over the top, this isn't working for me. Which is it's
Yeah.
curious.
And I also think that's offset too, just because, like, speaking of the string, like the actual murder itself, like the grittiness to it, and it's uncomfortably realistic, or at least it always
Sure.
felt that way to me. And I think that's a good way of immediately setting the tone for this film, because I mean, let's say it like it is. A lot of shit goes down in this film, compared to previously. So I think having it open in that way is definitely, I wouldn't say that them cutting it, if this was in Two Towers, it probably still would have worked just fine. But at the same time, having, like you were saying, Matt, having this be the opening is a great way for them to sort of set the stakes as it is. So in that sequence, I think it works well.
And on top of that, to the made that thing that made that really work for me was that heartbeat, that as the music tunes in, almost gives you a little bit of ring wraith, in terms of like that quiet shriek, kind of pitch, climbing in the backdrop of this strangulation. It's really eerie, really shows the kind of instant dominating nature of the ring, almost like a desperation of the ring as a character in this moment, because obviously from its perspective, not that it's really a sentient thing, but from the character idea of it,
it is
it's been
and it
down
isn't.
there.
That's the weird thing.
Yeah,
The ring's level of sentience is kind of, it's sentient, but not in the way that most people interpret sentience.
In
And
world,
also,
it doesn't matter. It's just the character, right? They're trying to make the character of the ring, and with that in mind, there's a sense of desperation and urgency from it in the fact that it's just come out of the river, having been there for however long, so many ages. And it's like, I must, this has to go my way. I've got to latch on. I've got to add up the and magnify the corruption. And that's kind of why we're seeing the immediacy of this, from like 0 to 100 in a way that you haven't seen in the rest of the film. It makes sense within the logical internal consistency of the world.
You could also interpret that Sauron, he put so much of his essence in the ring that it is kind of like a living thing, or like one of his organs. So like maybe you can interpret that pulse as almost like his actual like energy pulsating from it. Very, very Horcrux like, not to bring up Harry Potter or anything, but something along those terms. So I like how you can read into it in a lot of different ways and come to your own conclusions in this sequence alone. So yeah, again, all fantastic.
You've always liked how it's describing Sauron kind of pouring himself into the ring, Matt, haven't you?
Yeah.
And that line within the initial description from Gandalf.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, it's so unlike anything else in the Legendarium, and the fact that you could read into it in so many different ways, even if you read like the Silmarillion and the backstory of it and all that. I like the fact that it's just enough is explained for you to get the basic idea, but there's still that air of mystery to where, like, the horror of it or even the intrigue of it is kind of left to your imagination. And I think that really does also, it's a part of Tolkien's, writing in general. So the fact that he could find that balance, I think, is something that probably draws a lot of fans in of the books, from the get-go. So the fact that they were able to translate that here in their own way is, again, whether you're a Tolkien purist or not, the fact that you could still have that imagination and enjoyment is just fantastic to see, I think.
Yeah, all sold off the back, like Matt said, of a hobbit being dragged along by a fish. It's clever.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's impressive how much they get away with in this film.
And it's kind of nice because in the books, a lot of information. But someday, soon, hopefully, we'll talk about Shadows of the Past. It's one of the initial chapters of the Fellowship of the Ring. It's one of my favorite chapters.
We'll almost certainly open with that one, I think.
Yeah, it's just a giant info dump, but this is included in that. This story of how that happened, sort of roughly, and just kind of the surprise to Frodo and, at the time, I suppose, readers, that Gollum initially was something like a hobbit. Basically a hobbit. I think there's a slight difference. Were they called like Storish hobbits or something? Or some kind of like
So wait. Does that mean that? So I don't know if it's confirmed in the Legendarium at all, but like, are Frodo and Gollum like distantly related, or is it just not?
I don't know if it's that overt. I think it's just the kindred sort of hobbity kind.
Okay.
It's kind of like the way that the way that Gandalf speaks of it in the book, I think, is he it's one of my favorite just info dumps because it's just Gandalf talking.
I was going to say it's all the voice of Gandalf, isn't it? It's the delivery, for lack of a better term, within the scene that makes it work.
Because he connects it back to the story, the lie that the slight altering of the truth that Bilbo gave about the finding of the ring, like to the dwarves and Gandalf years ago. And Gandalf talked about how he was never quite satisfied with that, but he didn't press the issue, and he never suspected this was the One Ring. But he did mention, like, in retrospect, it made more sense when to him when Bilbo talked about the riddle game, the idea that they were familiar with each other's riddles. It's like it spoke to a kindred sort of past.
Right.
They understood each other's societies. So I think that's all it is. I don't think they're supposed to be blood related or anything necessarily.
Yeah, maybe not take it that literally, which is fine.
Yeah. Another fun little factoid or detail about this scene is like in the bit where like he's like Gollum's like rocking back and forth and turning into a monster. They had to digitally shrink his calves because
yes,
Andy Serkis had muscly legs, like because there's a rock climber.
Presumably because of rock climbing, but also gangling about like Gollum for a year straight.
Maybe that too, but I mean, he was too buff to like sell the idea of like a shrinking spindly Gollum, so they had to digitally shrink him, and that's
always
funny.
been really funny. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah,
imagine Andy Serkis being told like you're just too ripped, man.
Got to get you more gangly. Yeah, and the fact that it works so seamlessly as well, did a truly phenomenal job. Again, everything made it clear in the intro, but everything we've said about the previous films in terms of the effects, in terms of the music, in terms of the costuming, all of the back end production that goes into this, it's just so much more true, as true and more so.
In fact,
it's easily the best looking of the entire series. I mean, sorry, trilogy.
But on that point, they liked the final take of, or what, I don't know if it was the final take, but they liked the take that they used where he strangled Deagle and like got down and like was like listening to whether he'd stopped breathing. They liked Andy's performance so much that they wanted to keep that take, even though the actor who played Deagle, who was supposed to be dead, blinked. So they had to digitally freeze his eyes during that as well. So because like the amount of like post-production like detail that goes into these movies and just but I want that scene, but that one ruined it. We can fix it.
We have the technology.
Yes.
Yeah. But we leave this opening scene and cut to a kind of secondary opening scene. We'll be talking about the many openings and particularly endings of this film later. This was a scene that was pretty much cut wholesale. We had the opening, obviously, as the group arrive at Orthanc and speak to Treebeard, but a noticeable difference between the theatrical and the extended here.
This is definitely, I would say, probably the most egregious cut because it just fundamentally changes like so much of the overarching story, and it of course makes sense why Christopher Lee himself was also very pissed that this got cut in the way that it does, because in the original theatrical cut, the fact that they just leave him there it's ridiculous.
And I don't understand how much time it could have saved. It's not that long of a scene. I don't know.
There could have been questions, I guess, about the gruesome nature of it, or the slightly over top aspect of him being like stabbed by his own spoke wheel, etc. It's never that particular way you see the body kind of hit and land, and that's never been something that particularly gelled with me, like as a choice. I would have made that a bit more subtle personally, but that really small flavor thing aside, everything else I think is just a pure strength. It seems certainly a shame to lose it all.
Does that bear some similarity to what happens in the book? I haven't read the Return.
No.
Well, yeah, in the original book, he is stabbed to death by Grima. So
that remains the same, but he's not falling off a tower onto a spoke wheel. Obviously, it's
he's not falling off a tower because it's the scouring the Shire.
In the Shire.
I was just wondering if there was a
there isn't an equivalent in the Shire or anything.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah, so it just maybe a bit over the top, I think, that bit. But apart from that, I love the scene. I love in particular the fact that this is the first kind of glimpse of us seeing the redeemed Theoden. He's still got some work to do in this film, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But this is the first kind of sign we've seen of him, really coming back to himself as a king, coming back as a redeemer, coming back to say, no, Grima, come down from there. You've had enough of his evil. Free yourself, etc. That I think that worked really well as kind of teeing up the man we will see him kind of re-become throughout the story here. As well as doing the obvious things with plot points like Pippin being enchanted by the Palantir.
It's also a nice little, I mean, you could even say it's a nice little follow-up, in Grima's case from the previous film too, when he's like, he sees like the army of orcs going after Rohan, he like sheds that one tear because he's having like that internal conflict, and have that come to the forefront here is it's also nice to see. And like you were saying, Callan, you know, having Theoden be the one to extend that olive branch, even though Grima was obviously one of the main catalysts for him being under that spell in the previous movie. It's a nice showcase of his humanity, but you would want that in a character like Theoden, like you said, even if it still hasn't fully come full circle. And of course, you know, seeing Gandalf, you know, you get the famous, you know, your staff is broken, and that, like, that display of power and that display of just, you know, his authority. It's like, it's a really, you know, we don't get too many examples of just like some really, like, you know, hardcore, you know, magic in these sequences. So seeing that also to the forefront is really nice to see. This is also, I think, the only time in the trilogy where we get direct mentioning of the fact that there are 5 wizards, because you know, obviously with Saruman, you know, talking about, you know, the 5 staffs at that point is, you know, there's a bit of a, you know, some lore dropping here and there too, which is also interesting. Obviously that would be expanded on until we get to the Hobbit films too, and even then not by a huge degree.
A little way, you know, almost a meme in terms of referencing it. Yeah, I've forgotten their names. But the whole scene as well, I like the fact that it speaks
like nobody knows about them.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very much not been developed in the lore. Yeah, it's very much like, I don't remember, because it's very murky as to what happened with the with the 2 blue wizards in the east, but or even if they went to the east. But yeah, one of the things about the scene as a whole is the kind of theme behind it as well. It's quite it's one of the more overt examples of it, but it speaks to the kind of the tone and ideas that Tolkien himself was leaning into. The fact that evil is self-defeating, you know, good in its mercy against those who are evil and redeeming, etc. Decisions you make along those veins can have unexpected consequences later on. This one being the obvious example of, hey, you speak to Grima like that, reach out, you know, a hand of kindness. He sees that, resonates with it, sees the exact opposite from Saruman, and turns against him. You know, it's very overt and obvious here, but it speaks to the larger theme of the series, because what happens with Gollum, etc., would not have happened if both Bilbo and Frodo had not made the decisions about him that they had. It's I think it's important to establish that here, when the ultimate conclusion of the film is so, you know, tied into that that environment, plus a little nudge from God, depending on who you ask in the lore.
Right.
I think Tolkien will give you a resounding yes.
Yeah.
But like also to your point on that too, like seeing Saruman try his best even at the last moment after he's had his area destroyed and his staff broken, still trying, like, you know, wean his way out of it, you know, through words. I like the fact that they still emphasize the fact that, like, his word is kind of his one of, if not his greatest strength. So even though it ultimately fails him, the fact that it stays true to that characterization from the previous films is also really interesting, because that, to your point too, like, yeah, evil will fail, but evil will also fall back on what it knows best, even when it's cornered. So again, that nice little character consistency is you know, really appreciated. You know, the fact that, you know, having those transitions in the way that they do from what happened previously is really nice to see.
Every time I watch this scene, I always am like laughing, because they're just like talking, and that he's
and it's so funny. What? What was that? You've got to assume that Gandalf and Saruman are both respectively.
Like, what? I think they insulted you. It's like, oh, okay.
But yeah, no, I spoke briefly as well about the kind of thematic setup of this scene and what it means for us of the story. We transition away from this now to Rohan again, and a bit of the kind of the kind of legwork that needs to be done to set up the kind of majesty of the moment that is the lighting of the beacons, and the immediate answer of that. You know, the question of, will Rohan help you know, Gondor and Minas Tirith in their hour of need, and given the fact that they didn't, you know, where was Gondor when the Westworld fell, you know. It's kind of setting up the fact that even though Theoden has come so far and has made this progress, and yes, they are in a place of celebration, they aren't necessarily so willing to step straight into the fires again on behalf of people who didn't do the same for them from their point of view. Obviously, that wasn't exactly how it happened, but yeah, it's doing all the work necessary to make sure that when he does ultimately make the right choice, it's with all of the gravitas and the meaning and the power behind it. And you know, it's one of my favorite scenes in the film when he does make that choice. So yeah, I like all of that. And it's, you know, it's a bit of fun as well. We get to see some of what Rohan looks like when it's not being manipulated by Saruman and Grim Wormtongue, and got the
bit of a lighter side to the setting.
Yeah, the immediate existential threat has been lifted for a bit, and they're celebrating that, and hail the glorious dead. You know, a lot of cultural groundwork set up here, and really kind of showing that this is a shared culture and a people, you know, proud of themselves, rightly so. Yeah, so I like all of that, but that kind of gets put on hold for a bit while we transition away towards Gondor, because obviously with everything that happens with the Palantir, and Pippin again, fool of a took, but also kind of helping the situation out. It gives Gandalf kind of his guiding star for what to do next. Really, this mistake is it gives them a bit of a step forward.
When Gandalf is sleeping, like with his eyes open, is that a detail from the books or just a random thing in the movie?
I think random.
I don't know
though. Yeah,
it just feels like
it does feel like something that they'd have taken from the books, doesn't it? Yeah. Get in the comments, correct us on that one, because I've not looked at it for a while.
You can believe it either way. But what I will say, something I always really liked about the sequence too, is like the sheer horror that's on, after he touches the Palantir and he sees, he really deserves a lot of credit, because we never, obviously he tends to play the character in a much more lighthearted manner. So the fact that the sheer horror on his face, he basically just saw the devil for all intents and purposes.
Spoke to him, was tortured by him. He hurts him, doesn't he? Yeah. He hurt me. I love that delivery. And again, as we talked about with the fish and everything from the first scene, it's played from the shot of him going, as he's just kind of holding this thing and flailing around in kind of a slightly quasi-cut shot. It shouldn't work as well as it does if not on the back of the setting and the stakes and the performance. I think it was it speaks to how well they've tied all this together that works for people.
Yeah, and to be fair, we've had 2 movies up until this point that gives you glimpses of what Sauron is and what he is capable of. So the fact that you can buy him having that reaction in this moment is again, it's a good way of saying a lot with a little, because you're still, even though you did just have this victory, the true threat, the true horror of everything has only just begun. So it's a good way of being like, okay, you have your celebration, but now shit's about to get real. So and all well and good. And also I like little things like, obviously Legolas being on guard duty, because his Legolas elf nature, his elf eyes can see very far apparently still. So they put him on guard duty, which is, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I feel like he definitely has the least to do in this film versus any of the others, which is kind of a shame. But
just stand there and look pretty. He does his job
pretty much. Yeah.
But
one of my very few complaints I would say with this is a good chunk of the Fellowship do feel a little underutilized, him specifically. But again, it's nothing that breaks the experience for me.
It's a continuation of the problem I raised in the previous films with him and Gimli in particular. The fact that they used for this is going to be the exposition point, this is going to be the comic relief point. They kind of narrowed down in the kind of scope of what they're supposed to be bringing to screen. Mostly from a factor of time involved. In the books, they're not that relevant to the overall story. They obviously have plot presence and they have character presence more so than the films, but not to the degree that they could have really worked with without making these already long films even longer. So I can forgive them for it, but it is a shame.
I like that you pointed out that the scene shouldn't work as well as it does, though, with the Palantir, because it is just wrestling around with the ball. And
it's
knocks at everybody that touches. It's almost like cackling as it's rolling away. It's like this ancient evil, and how do you beat it? Throw a blanket over it.
Which has been done before as well when he throws it in the tower as well. It's just any problem with Palantir, just blanket.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but so it shouldn't work as well as it does, but it does work. So yeah, it's a fun sequence, and it's there to convey, the idea of we have a ticking clock element now. So let's get on with the business of the movie, of the plot.
Exactly. Gives that guiding light. And that transitions us away from Rohan and kind of leads us into what was going to be happening with Gondor. But before we do that, we'll just mention we're going to be talking about everything that happens with Frodo and Sam and Gollum, obviously, kind of at the tail end of this, because this is obviously, and I think quite well, intercut between the main kind of story of the Fellowship side of things. And they did a good job of taking what was in the original books, obviously completely a separate story, cut into the 2 halves of the book and merge them together, for my money, pretty seamlessly. But we'll discuss that side of things afterwards, just because it's much more self-contained and it's easier than doing that and jumping back and forth. But for the Minas Tirith introduction, I say introduction, we've seen it before, obviously in the first film. It has been pretty well established in terms of the shots and Gandalf making his way up the city. But it does feel like a kind of reintroduction in scope, given the fact that it's now going to be the kind of primary setting of the film for so long of it anyway.
yeah, it actually feels well. It actually feels like a setting because not only do we spend more time there, but we actually see the people and the characters way more than we ever did previously. So it is both a reintroduction and mainly an introduction. It's a reintroduction to the setting, but an introduction to the culture. That's how I always
we're showing the people as well. Just before we dive into that, actually, I just want to mention as well. But I like the separation of Merry and Pippin. I thought that was a very human kind of moment there before we led into the political and the high stakes drama stuff of being taken away. Gandalf having to separate Pippin from Merry is kind of it's a maturity moment for him. He's like, this is the first time he's not had Merry to lean on as a supportive figure and kind of working as a duo. You see Pippin kind of come into himself in typical humorous Pippin fashion throughout this, and that's set off with our introduction to Denethor after all this time. Matt, you're a big fan of Denethor, aren't you? Well, not as a person, but as a character.
I wouldn't say that it's the best performance in the movie because I think everyone's doing such great work. I think Sean Astin and Elijah Wood do amazing things towards the end. I think Viggo Mortensen's really good in it. Sir Ian, who were just Andy Serkis, obviously. There's no. We were just talking about Billy Boyd. There's no end of great performances in the movie. I think it might be my favorite performance. I won't say the best because everyone's doing such great work.
It's a lot of fun.
It might be my favorite.
It's a lot of silly fun.
There's a lot of energy that goes into this character.
Yeah, talking about things in this film gets away with. He is, Shakespeareanly, cartoonishly, thespianly evil from start to finish, and he just rides that wave all the way through.
John Noble, I mean, he can kind of say anything or do anything. I've never seen him do anything bad or boring, like in any role I've ever seen him in. Even in just silly things. There was a show called Fringe that I don't even really remember the plot of. It was kind of like a sci-fi serialized show where they had an overarching plot, but they were individual adventures. And he was like a crazy scientist in a lab, and he had an assistant named Astrid, and he could never remember her name. And it was just funny. With one word, he could like get me laughing. He'd go, asteroid, and he said, I need your help doing this or that or whatever, But he was perfect. So he's wonderful in this as the steward of Gondor. It's a great introduction to him holding like the broken horn and everything. I love his interplay with these characters so much, and I love the set of like the throne room itself.
I was going to say it's a real point of contrast from what we've seen with Rohan as well.
And the fact that he is sitting in like the not real throne,
and it still has all that majesty, that's been spoken to from everything that's been happening with the world of men. All the setup for what Gondor and what Aragorn is supposed to be is kind of shown here by the fact that this is a diminished state, even though it looks 10,000 times more upper class, fancy, put together and regal from like the history of men than what we've seen in Rohan. It's nothing in comparison right now. It's diminished, it's dwindled. It's got the same shade that was covering Theoden's halls up until the end of film 2. We've seen the life of Rohan to the shadow and despair of Gondor right now in Minas Tirith.
Which obviously symbolized too by the tree that's not in bloom. The tree of kings at the front there. That being something they set up in the previous films as well. But I think also
just the Tree of Kings as a name, it's so beautiful for what he's trying to establish there in a single point of symbology and imagery.
I think also the reason his madness though really does work, even though it is cartoonishly hammy throughout, is the escalation, because you do see him become more and more unhinged as the scenes go on. So the fact that even though it is in escalation, you do see from start to finish with his reactions. So I think that's why it works, even though it is so over exaggerated. The fact that you see him at one point and then just go so far off the deep end by the end of it that you can buy that he would act this way in the way that he does. So I think in that, again, it's like in anything else it wouldn't work, but the fact that it's set up in the way that it is really does show the strength of the filmmaking and just the directing as well, because doing that is acting escalating insanity is not the easiest thing for any actor to pull off,
particularly in the way that these movies were shot, like all out of order. Who knows when he was supposed to be doing what or when.
Oftentimes start with the final scene,
exactly.
Mount Doom.
The Sean Astin and Elijah Wood, when they're like all messed up at Mount Doom, like some of that was some of the first stuff they did, like
which is crazy.
Not the very first, but some of the very first stuff they ever did. It was just like, how do you mentally prepare for that or imagine what you've been through before you did any of the middle stuff, though? So
and yet
that
they
was
still
really
delivered.
cool. But
It's a hell of a performance from both of them.
But Denethor really, I mean, he has no business being called the best performance because everyone's doing such great work. But I love every move he makes in this. I could just hang on every word. I don't know. He is hammy and campy and just sort of out there, but I mean, he plays it to the hilt. Like,
there's not a single ounce of like, am I doing this too much? Right? Like you see, he's just riding. He's having a great time. You know, he almost to the point where I don't care if these films turn out well. I'm getting paid. This is fun. You know,
he's enjoying himself very, very clearly.
And you mentioned his kind of journey, his character arc. Well, his diminishment, his retreat into insanity. Evan. I think the thing that makes that work, because each scene is ultimately just Denethor's in it. Let's establish how insane he is. Moving on. Yeah, it's like he's just getting more and more crazy. The thing that makes establish crazy, escalate crazy, done. But the thing is, the reason it works and stays engaging is I think that they play him off the different personalities well. You know, we have the introduction with him and Gandalf. We have him with Faramir, him with Pippin, obviously. Him with just basically him as the same person when he gets to the pyre. You're getting to see the kind of different tones of madness from him and how he's kind of interacting with the world around him, interacting with his power base, etc. And he's kind of a mirror. He's bouncing off the other characters. You're seeing Pippin's reaction to him. You're seeing Gandalf's disdain for him. You're seeing Faramir's heartbreak over him. And my God, Faramir needs protection. That man, he's too pure for this family.
Okay, so
I love Faramir. I mean, again, the sequences with him and well, to your point though, one of my favorite sequences with them is like that POV when he's looking at Faramir, but then you see like Boromir's like memory ghost, whatever you want to call it, like behind him, like. Oh my gosh, that is so powerful because
I love the way his face like melts from like the smile to
the
like
disappointment.
The trembling anger.
It's like it's just a pure disgust. And Faramir, the performance. I mean, that was the strongest part for me. The heartbreak as he gets that. You know, you wish now that our positions were reversed. You know that I had died and Boromir had lived, and the fact that he just resignedly sits back and goes, "Yes, I wish that."
Yeah,
and it's like,
we've talked about
Faramir,
he's not making
don't
eye
listen
contact,
to him.
But he's saying that, but he's not making eye contact. I love that deep. In fact, he's just looking straight on while he's not even looking his son in the eye as he's saying that. Like, damn, that really hurt. That hits.
We've talked about this a lot, like off camera over the years. But when I saw this in the theater, like many people cried. I never cried at this movie, but like many people were crying like all over the place. Especially like toward the end, I noticed it more, and that just never made me like sad,
same with me. Yeah,
but I remember like all this stuff with Faramir. Like there was this one lady and her boyfriend that I presumably is her boyfriend. They were like 2 seats over, and everything Faramir, she was just like waterworks. She was so crying, like and I get it though because it's all really powerful stuff.
For sure.
Like and with the
particularly
song
for anyone who's had a shade of experience
singing,
like that as well. So there are a lot of people out there who've had that kind of I would hope not too many that extreme a disconnect, but certainly people have had shades of it. You know that suffering with kind of having a connection with family members and stuff. It really hurts. It leaves scars. And Faramir, one of the things we talked about in the second film is how much he's risen above the kind of he's a very basic character in the books. He's very much supposed to be the pure paragon man. He was chosen by Tolkien to be kind of the counterpoint to Boromir, to be the standard that men are supposed to be aspiring to. And that it was a thematic choice. It degrades the kind of quality of him as a human character, I think, as we talked about, but it was a difference. It was a choice by the author. In the films, they've gone the other way. They've kind of made him more well-rounded, more human, more of a flawed character, so that he can then rise to be that kind of that paragon. And this is where we see it most. This is where we see the kind of dark aspect of that. The fact that he's facing this horrific denouncement by his father and admittance and just being cast aside by the man who is supposed to have raised him up and be his biggest supporter. And that passing of the torch to the next generation, it's like he's just, well, you don't count. Boromir's gone, next generation's done, everything's doom and gloom. It's given up on the future. Faramir then has to rise above that and just surpass his father anyway. I like the dip into despair first though. It's such a human and just and real like response to this. Like his whole world has been shattered apart. His literal society is crumbling apart around him. Evil is literally on the horizon. I mean, it's right there on the horizon physically, and it's coming for him. What's he going to do except what he does? And it's not exactly something you can get behind in terms of the fact he's throwing his men's life away. But it's the poetic message behind it. It's the fact that this is going to be the last act of defiance. Because from his concern, they're doomed, and so whatever he does doesn't matter.
I love the scene. I think it's a change from the book, but I love the scene with him giving the armor to Pippin or helping him. With that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yes.
The fact that it was that's
yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
I will say this too. I actually I always like the scene where Pippin like swears fealty to him. In that, like, because like when he says like, until my lord release me or death, and the fact that he said, and I will not forget, like the fact that he seems genuinely kind of happy, like appreciative in that moment. I don't know, like something about that always kind of struck me. It's like, okay, maybe this guy did have shades of being a somewhat decent person at some point.
Well, he was,
but then
right, in the
still
lore,
with the flavor of making him kiss the ring immediately afterwards. It's still that sliminess.
I was about to say though too,
but you're right. I completely love both sides of it. You see that glimmer of what he's supposed to have once been, but then immediately kind of like that distaste aspect of it. Yeah, I love both of those.
Yeah, and it tees up, later on when he releases him from his service before the pyre scene, which is also a really nice setup. And I like that Pippin too is like he's kind of, you could almost see him wearing like Faramir's old armor, as he's kind of like the I'm trying to find the words, the symbol of like, this is like what this family was at a different time in a different way. It wasn't always this doom and gloom, so to speak. So the fact that he kind of is that bridge between that, I think is again, I don't know if it's intentional, but you can kind of read into that.
Yeah, it's kind of the inheritor of Faramir's spirit, it's trying to be that youthful.
There you go. That's what I was trying to find
him,
there.
And I also Gandalf as well, like get off. Like it's just so done your shit, Pippin. Everything we do.
Well, it's just like it's more like just frustration at the whole thing.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's best if you don't see anything at all, Pippin. And then the first thing he does is that.
Yeah, what's his name is playing king and holding court, and I shall not forget it, Master Hobbit, or whatever. It's like, we don't have time for this. Like, just listen to me. And it's just like, no, despair, and the throne of Gondor's mine, and blah blah blah, and my son's dead. Just like I mean, and I love when that scene where they first are like leaving the room, and Ian keeps looking behind him like, that guy's crazy. He's crazy. Just like,
this is a
I
very
can't remember everything he's saying, but
what was said by Aragorn and Gimli rather in the Fangorn in the second film was like, you're much grumpier Gandalf. Like, you're seeing more and more of that as just things are coming apart, and he's trying to hold them together in Gondor. It's just it's really funny. And
I mean, in fairness, he did just crawl out of the literal afterlife. So
no, for really sure. Don't blame him at all. But it's just funny, and like I said, Sirian just sells it with his delivery. It's like, but then that it sets up everything that comes afterwards with the two as well.
Yeah, with the scene with the song and the charge, like the doomed, charge and everything. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's wonderful.
And taken from what was supposed to be a pretty charming, just traveling song in the book as well. In book one, that's fine. It's the Hobbit songs that are really haunting. Kind of thing. Yeah, it's perfect.
It's kind of like a happenstance thing. I think I can't remember if it was Fran or Philippa, but they said that along with a bunch of the actors, they'd been out just one night for a karaoke night, and they found out he can really sing. He should be in the. He should do something in the movie. So that's how they found that out. But
just piggybacking off that, one little editing blip I really like that they do in this sequence is like when you right before the final line, when you see the orc like cock the arrow back, the fact that you could like hear the bow like as he's about to like let go, like because he's like really like pulling it to its maximum. The fact that you could hear that clearly. And also you could hear like the horses hitting the ground right before that, and then there's the smash cut.
You did that really well with the mic just then, by the way. That was a really well replicated sound effect. It sounded exactly like the muffled hooves.
The fact that the editing in that sequence, I think really deserves its praise, because the sound and the fact that it just immediately cuts right before he would have naturally let the arrow go. Really nice stuff.
Yeah, and I can't remember, just a little just humorous point to end on, a little bit of black comedy, I guess. The fact that like Denethor is like eating and it's all gross like during all this, is like sing me a song, he's like eating and crunching and stuff. I remember like years ago I just saw like a funny list of like people were talking about what's the most traumatic bits of like I can't remember if it was like all these movies or just movies
I know where
you're
going with this,
or like somebody like mentioned Denethor eating that one tomato. It's so gross. It's like it's just
the opposite
so
of ASMR. It's like perfect, just kind of like, oh god, it's like scraping a chalk down a chalkboard, nails down a chalkboard, isn't it? It's horrible,
disgusting.
some people critique the film in that it feels feels over the top for that shot. Like that whole, it was like smacking you over the head with the symbology of it. But I've always found it quite powerful. I know it's obviously very obvious and stylistic, but I liked it.
Yeah. Also from a character like Denethor, who's been established.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, if anyone's gonna do
it, like would you expect it from anyone else? It would have been wouldn't have. The fact that
I mean, in the Middle Ages,
you're right.
In the Middle Ages, they ate with their hands anyway, so everyone was kind of probably gross like that. But he just is feeling so off, and also like
tactile.
His son's trudging to his death for no reason. In times of war, maybe a normal person wouldn't have an appetite at all right now, but he's just like, sing me a song, Master Hobbit.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
just gross, and it's like it shows his mind is gone. It's vanished. So it's over the top, but there's no problem with it. The movie's over the top. These movies are over the top. Look at all those close-ups of all the crazy. But the Palantir scene, for example. I mean,
the books are over the top too. It's fantasy. That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. I've never had a problem with it myself. Like I say, it's always worked for me. But I can see the criticism from other people that it's a taste thing. It's pushing the boundaries of like, okay, it's really smacking you over the head with.
Also, like there's something about it that for many years, Peter Jackson did horror movies, and even though that's not a horror scene,
it's a whole other
the discomfort that you get from that. It's that kind of a thing.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
I also too the continuity from like the previous films, the fact that that's the city that he and his brother kind of helped to take back on the day before the main quest too. It's a nice little like symbolism, like he's kind of riding back to the last place where his brother and him like achieved victory and stuff. That's also one of the reasons it means to him. Again, nice little juxtaposition to obviously the history of this entire line.
And all of this obviously is coming around the same kind of preparing for the siege situation of Gondor in despair. It's reaching out for help with the Rohan. Gandalf's kind of next port of call is, okay, well, the person in charge is going to be of no use to me. Let's do what I do and get the ball rolling anyway. Sending Pippin up the tower,
lighting
giving
the beacons.
Giving us one of the greatest cinematic sequences of all time for just lighting some beacons. People joke about the fact that Peter Jackson would have gone to Howard Shore and just says, just a track to play in the background as we're showing some shots, and it gives him like one of the best pieces ever. It truly is one of the high points of the trilogy for me. That music it's just panning across the beautiful landscape of New Zealand, cutting to the reaction from Aragorn running up Edoras, which is not an easy feat. I can speak to you from personal experience now, and also then obviously the reaction from Theoden, just that turn, that hanging of the music, that waiting, that silence, that what will happen next as they turn to their king, and Rohan will answer. That is it's just a perfect middle beat for the story of this film, to set up everything that's going to happen with the climax and everything that we're going to see for the action pacing. There's not too much to talk about with the action side of things, but everything on the thematic end and the build up to the siege and the climax and the themes involved are so perfectly executed.
I think it's worth also pointing out too, just to the viewers, the fact that we're kind of really focusing so much on various select sequences is because there is a lot more action in this film than in the previous one, which means not that it's like not that it's lacking in characterization or anything like that. It's just there's a lot more to it in this film, so it's like it's less to talk about it for that reason in that specific sense. Not that there's. I think the reason this movie really succeeds, I think for me and I think for all of us, is that it blends the character and story beats from the first film and the major action set pieces from Two Towers and kind of puts them together in a way that really takes again best of both worlds here. So I think that's why I think tonally and structurally speaking, it's the most balanced of the entire trilogy. Though your miles may vary depending on what you're into.
Yeah, and the themes I was talking about behind the action that makes everything work. It's like we said with the first film's discussion. They're universal and they're timeless. It's not allegorical here. This is the side of good standing up and uniting against evil and the threat that it faces. Not choosing to isolate into your own little pocket and your own little tribe, but instead rallying to the call. Doing what from Theoden's perspective they didn't do for you. And just going anyway and riding out. This is going to be our end, and we will have it make such an end. Kind of that rallying cry and that kind of pushing forward and reaching out to help their friends and their neighbors. I think that's something that's just timeless, and it speaks to a lot of people. And it's coming off the back again of Theoden's personal journey. We've seen him struggle, we've seen him diminish, we've seen him rising back to his status as a true, king of men. And I say that obviously as humanity rather than men and women, as is about to be clear with Eowyn, and that's the other aspect half of this.
I was about to say this is Eowyn like sneaking away to
the
fight.
Spirit. Yeah, exactly. The spirit of those who want to fight being able to, that call to action, that choice to stand up and do the right thing. It's all represented here and really kind of hammered in with the battles. It's what makes the charge work is not the fact that there is a cool speech and lots of people charging and great action. That's obviously all true anyway. But it's the fact that what the message represents. It's look what these people are willing to sacrifice for their fellow kind. Just for the right. If it could have been elves, it could have been dwarves. It wouldn't matter. They're doing what's right despite the cost. And that's what this entire trilogy is basically about. It's Frodo picking up the ring, going to Mount Doom because it's the right thing to do, despite the personal sacrifices. And Theoden is like the linchpin of that on the human side, because obviously Aragorn is the poster child of the humanity of this. He's going to be rising up to be the new king of the West as a whole, but he's not had to go through the kind of hardship in the same way. He's not had the responsibility. He's not borne the burden until the very end, and he's doing it in now what will be relative peacetime. He's kind of rising to that leadership role. He's not been saddled with it the entire time, to use pardon the pun. Do we want to talk about anything in particular happening during the siege? For me, it's all the kind of character piece, like Pippin and Gandalf at the gates, and just talking about what lies beyond, etc. All the really cool human moments littered throughout to kind of break up the pacing of the high action.
My favorite thing of the whole thing is like the death of Denethor. To be honest, I
that as well.
Yeah, it's just so over the top.
Crazy lunatic who's just jumping off the. He runs a long way on fire.
Yes, a long way, very long way. Yeah.
What I will say is I do like how this action sequence really differentiates itself from the climax at Helm's Deep, not just visually, but also just in the way that the set pieces, the specific set pieces are used. I like the fact that they use like the different levels of Gondor as like a way to differentiate the style of action from Helm's Deep, because it's like okay, fall back in this level, we'll do this, fall back in this level, and the fact that they make a lot of unique use of the the technology that obviously you could obviously trace to Saruman being like the engineer and pioneering. Well, also Saruman and Sauron, because obviously from the deep lore they served under the same Mire and all that, who was Aule the Smith and stuff. So the fact that I really like that they use. Well, yeah. Says the guy in a hobbit hole. But that's all well and good. I mean, I don't have too much to say about it. The choreography is great. The Witch King of Angmar. I mean, a lot of people talk about his design and his armor and stuff being pretty out there. But I'll be honest, I'll be damned if it doesn't leave an impression. I'm going to say that much.
I love when the camera pans down and the mole just gets bigger and
morning
bigger.
Stars,
just the morning star, exactly.
Yeah.
They talk about the fact that you sure you want to go bigger, and Peter's like, no, bigger. And it's like, Peter, are you sure? and it works perfectly. It's that endless panning shot.
It's completely impractical, but who cares? It's awesome.
Exactly. It's just that right level between believable and cool of cool. It's perfect. But yeah, you're right. The distinction of the levels and also technology being used to make this happen. I like the fact that they didn't just go full CGI with it all. It has a lot of weight and gravitas and timelessness to it, because they're using physical props. I mean, they literally had not full stone concrete blocks being thrown at them, obviously, but actual physical.
Duck.
Yeah, well, exactly. Things flown. There were people in metal suits of armor running around and not really sure where these things were going to land. They were literally flinging them over faux walls. So they kind of had that experience of, oh god, they really captured the sense of being there and present in the scene. Very effective. I don't know what they were actually throwing, but it was something substantial.
Did they use miniatures for this sequence too at certain points? Because for some
bigatures,
at times it really feels like they did, but the fact that they're integrated so well is really nice. I think this is also worth pointing out too, that just the special effects, for battles, like this is really where everything kind of peaked for this trilogy. You could definitely see them really go full force on this. It still looks fantastic even to this day. So
yeah, the technical using was massive. They kind of built it from scratch, to be able to make these kind of large scale armies fight each other believably, because they were interacting more like what would traditionally have been done by video game like design, like that they were actually physically in the space rather and following kind of quote unquote programming, low stakes AI behavior rather than just individually puppeted by designers. So yeah, all very cool.
So do we want to talk about the ghosts?
No. Let's not talk about the ghosts. Let's not talk about the worst thing in the entire trilogy. It's well,
worst thing
what
in
is
the
your
entire
thoughts?
trilogy.
I think so. Don't get me wrong. I don't look
brother.
at them and seethe. I'm not sitting there like, oh my god, this is terrible or anything like that. But to me, if I had to choose one thing to take out of the whole trilogy of Lord of the Rings, it would be this ingredient. I mean, people joke about the Eagles, but there's gloss and there's stuff you could do to talk about that and get around it. It's not perfect, whatever. We just move on. But with the ghost, it's just such an obvious undercutting of the tension and the stakes and the drama.
Peter Jackson said he didn't know what to do about them. He was like, now I've got like this, undead army, and there's no like stakes. I don't know, like I mean, it's kind of. It's also the fact that they take up so much of that trio's time. You know what I mean?
It's a time sink from the rest of the story.
Anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. And to be fair, obviously the idea behind them, the core idea of their presence on the battlefield, it was much smaller in the books, but it was there and it was a huge part. So they couldn't get away from that. That's not Peter Jackson's fault. But what I do blame him a little bit for, and it's one of like 2 criticisms of the entire trilogy. So bear in mind that I love everything he's done with this apart from this, is that he did spend a lot of time on the whole, let's go and find these ghost people and, recruit them. Like I granted you have to do to an extent, you can't just have them appear out of nowhere, they have to have had substance beforehand, but like you said, it's the time sink of how much time they do spend there. And with the setting of the skulls falling down like an Indiana Jones skit, like it does not fit with the rest of the story for me. And it's just something you kind of pretend to forget until it goes back to it, and okay, this is fast forward kind of thing.
I do appreciate the setup, the fact that this is kind of like the focal point for like the reforging of the blade, Gondor, the flame of the West. First of all, the actual sequence of the reforging is fantastic, and having Arwen, giving her more agency, which we kind of established in the previous review as well. I like all of that. I also like, there's obviously the famous, I'm not resheathing you until the battle is done, which is, famously, like Vigo, like the sword was so difficult for him to, use properly that line was a nice little scapegoat for them, him not needing to resheath it constantly. So that's all that's all well and good. I like I said, everything that leads up to the ghosts, I'm fine with. And even then, like I will say the fact that the sword and like it's further proof of his like kingship, and it's kind of he's finally taking the lead as again there's that famous speech put aside the ranger, become what you were born to be. All of that I think is fantastic. That's all great. You have the pendant breaking, obviously. Later on when he, confronts the Palantir and all that. Again, all fantastic. But the actual sequence of the ghost itself, the ghosts themselves, I agree, is just like, okay, like, what is this for? And then also, it doesn't help too that, again, with Gimli and Legolas, it's like, okay, Legolas, he's just expositing, like, oh, this is the tombs of such and such, we're here. Like, all of that. Or Gimli being the comic relief, like him crunching on the skulls and stuff. It's like, oh, okay, like, We've seen so much of this already.
Yeah, it's very over the top. That the best line of that is when he's like, "Oh, I'd never heard the end of it." Like that's the best. Like that's the balance of tone for comedy for him.
I will say
at his funniest.
Yeah. I do like though. I also like the line where he's like, where Aragorn's like, "Don't look down," and then like you just see Gimli like pause, and you can like kind of tell behind his like, "Don't look down, don't look down," but then he just like he has to do it.
Yeah,
and then
it's cheesy as hell, but the performance is still making it work. Yeah, exactly. But
John Rhys Davies really like. I love his expressions in that sequence because, like, you could just see, like, I don't actually want to look. I don't actually, but I kind of do. And then he just, as he's like, oh, and then you see the skulls. Like, it's a well crafted sequence, even though it is cheesy as all hell.
Yeah, and you're right to point out all the positives about it. Like the set dressing around the kind of the story point is brilliant. Like everything with Elrond turning up and the delivery of the sword and yeah, everything you said there is fantastic. I love all of that. It's just the actual scene itself as he's going into the cave, and also to an extent the fact that it was basically convenience. If they hadn't have happened to been mustering at that one point, he never would have thought to look down that creepy alleyway and go that route. You've had hints of it before now that take that pass, etc. But it's just okay if they just happen to go into this one little tomb and happen to be having just been given this sword that will help prove your lineage and happen to be the person who can summon his army, that just happens to then go outside and find a bunch of ships at that exact moment. The whole thing, it just feels less than what we get everywhere else in the trilogy. But it's not the end of the world, we needed something that was going to put a quick capstone on the battle, I suppose, and get us hurrying off to the Black Gate, because in film terms, it's pretty difficult to go from the Siege of Gondor to the Black Gate as two separate high stakes events and not have it feel just a bit of a add on at the end. The way they do make it work is clever by tying it to the thematic aspect of Frodo, of course. Like the court scene where they're talking about what they're going to do next, and it's like, well, why not just leave them there? And having to explain it it's good setup for the audience to keep up with everything. So yeah, I like that. Also, Gimli, the humor again is well, certainty of death, small chance of success. What are we waiting for? I love that delivery. It's perfectly
everything they've
them
gone through up
marching
until this
off.
point.
Exactly. It's just that encapsulation of the Fellowship story and journey.
Yeah. Before we move on from that, though, I will say I like the sequence where he releases them from their oath. The fact that he stays true to his word. Till the end.
Yeah,
it's the timing of it.
Yeah, it's just funny how could you just look? Yeah, I swear, I promise, I will fulfill the oath. Just please, just give me 2 more hours. Fly that way, kill everyone in Mordor, come back. I'll let you go straight away. Just please, that's all I'm thinking of in the back of my head. It's just like keep for one more day.
I don't think it would have been as big of an issue if Gimli himself didn't call attention. Like, I actually would have cut that where he's like, good to have, in a pinch these lads. It's like I actually would have cut that personally, because like the fact that you're like drawing attention to this plot hole, but then you immediately release. It's like, okay, like it's kind of awkward. Like I legit, like if I were to like cut anything, any little sequence, it would have been Gimli saying that, like, because like that's just like. The fact that you're bringing attention to it and then immediately not following up on it, it's a little awkward.
Yeah. And also just the fact that, I may be mistaken that it is actually part of the book, but from talking purist side of things, it doesn't seem like a very Gimli thing to do. Breaking an oath and a promise you've made is not very dwarven, let alone Gimli. So there's that aspect as well. But do you guys want to talk about, because we briefly glossed over the Eowyn aspect of the battle, because that was like the big story within the conflict.
With the Witch King and stuff. That's all well and
because I like the way that the character of the Witch King was built up, in this one. Because the director and the writers, they talked about how, because so much of the film is like set up, they kept feeling like the first cut of the film, like when they were editing, was like really dragging, and so that's why you get some changes from like the source material, where wherever they could, they dialed up the drama up to 11. That's one of the reasons why Denethor is as kooky crazy as he is. Just hitting all the buttons there. Some of the Frodo, Sam, Gollum stuff is taken to a greater height than what's in the book for that reason. But yeah, the character of the Witch King, they really wanted to like differentiate him and find that cool helmet for him, and just showing him like leaving Minas Morgul with like his forces and just what he's riding, like the fell beast and everything. It's really cool. So I love the build up to him, because it really just feels like he broke Gandalf's staff, which I know a lot of nerds got really angry about.
They really hate that, because in lore terms that doesn't make sense, but in story terms, who gives a damn? In the context of the films, it works perfectly. It sets up stakes, it makes tension, it adds to the fact that Gandalf, because even in the books, Gandalf is concerned by him. He's not like he's worried about losing him per se, but he is concerned about him as a threat, given Sauron's will is bent on him.
That particular scene, though, even I think it was Fran, I can't remember if it was Fran or Philippa, but one of the writers criticized themselves with the fact that he hears the horn and just like leaves, even though like Gandalf's like there, because they were like, that's fundamentally kind of like lame, but we can't kill Gandalf again.
I always also kind of rationalize that sequence with the idea that like Gandalf really was despairing at that point, so he was kind of mentally nerfing himself. Plus, like the whole Witch King's thing, like one of, like, again, not to be like the lore purist or anything, but like one of his biggest things is that he feeds on fear and despair. So you could argue just in that moment he was like empowered and Gandalf was weakened. So it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in the books it does make mention that Sauron is bending his will on the moment as well. Like I feel like it mentions that he is empowered in a way that he wouldn't normally be. So it's not like he hasn't done. It isn't slightly covered in the books from memory anyway.
Exactly. So it's like it's a weird thing for people to complain about, and even then you could even use that as justification for him fleeing when the horn sounds off, because then suddenly Gandalf and the rest are full of hope.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's
the courage is back.
Which is basically like kryptonite to him anyway. So it's like it's not that big of a deal.
Within the context of the film, it works perfectly, but it's just the fact that in the books, the exact scene effectively happens just at the gates, and the Witch King flees. So for book purists, I can understand the kind of gut kickback of just, no, this doesn't make sense. I don't like this. It's changed. Don't it's altered Tolkien's words. Get it away from me. So I can kind of see the instinct there, but just looking at the films as a whole as an independent adaptation is the key word. I think it works very, very well, despite, like you said, Matt, the slight laziness in the fact that they could have just gobbled him up there and flown off before, not left him.
It's just
his staff is broken. In his mind, his power is broken, so it does still work.
Yeah. I don't care about it, but I don't have a problem with it. It's them themselves going, we kind of give Gandalf a little bit of an out here for no strong reason. Like just narratively, it feels a little weak, like to them, to the people that wrote it. But it is what it is. Also, Andy Serkis pulling triple duty because he voiced the Witch King as well, in addition to Mordecai.
Great voice, like you said, great imagery as well. Everything about the motion of the the Witch King stands out to me. Like just the way.
I mean, similar concepts, to be fair.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Same but just when he's
he's
turning in place, and like the way he swings the Morning Star, and just the kind of the angle of the head tilt. The voice when he's talking to Gothmog, to slay them all. And just turning just that whole like you said, Matt, the setup, the build up to it. This is a character that earns his presence on screen beyond just the rule of cool imagery factor. They've built him up nicely, and the fact that it was Gandalf who first introduced him as well. He's obviously been present on screen as one of the Nine Ring Wraiths, just kind of nameless and faceless, but he's bigged up by Gandalf himself. It's against which I have not been tested kind of vibe again, like with Balrog. And that leads us, of course,
Frodo on Weathertop too.
Yeah, exactly. He's stabbed. Yeah, the fact that you've met him before, it's just got this cool eeriness to it that helps add to all the larger scale tension that we've got established throughout the entirety of the siege. But this obviously leads to the point we're talking about with Eowyn, who, I mean, I love her in these films. Death
of Theoden, first of all.
Yeah, of course, reacting to that. I mean, the fact that she's saying goodbye to him. Or just, I guess that comes straight afterwards, isn't it? She talks him after having slain the Witch King.
Yeah, he's injured right before.
Yeah, he's injured before. I love his expression, by the way. I never keep pinning away from Eowyn, but she's kind of the fulcrum of this. When he's turning, he's just led them against a massive charge of Oliphants, and then turns back and he's like, oh. It's just like his look is like, come on, give me a break, as this flying serpent, Drake dragon flying down and grabs him. You got to feel bad for the guy. He's doing everything he can, and he's miraculously surviving it. And then this guy just singles him out and comes down on him. But like you said, Evan, the horn, the rallying cry, the fact that he was a symbol of courage. It does beg to question what the fell beasts in their entirety, and the Nazgûl as well, were doing for the entirety of the time Theoden was standing there giving his speech. Because I feel like a few fell beasts swooping down and just swiping them out would have done some damage to that charge.
Yeah.
Probably.
Just a minor gripe, but it is funny to think about that, because he just turns to the horn, flies off, and then we don't see him again until he swoops down on Theoden.
Scare them off with his light or something in this one?
That was when they were picking up Faramir's.
Okay, so they were really tired after that, and they needed a nap, right?
But so we get the Eowyn scene with the Witch King. I love her in this film. She was a borderline cheesy in the second one. There's a lot of doe eyes, and kind of because of the kind of poetic lines where she's got to deliver, it's not so much time to sit in her as a character and like, where is Aragorn? Where is he? That kind of thing. She's
the soup scene that's been memed to hell at this point.
Yeah, but exactly, the soup scene. But this film, she's kind of probably come into her own. We're seeing the strength of her character that has been set up in the second one, but we haven't seen demonstrated in the second one. She's finally being able to stand up and do what she wants to do, which is fight for her people and fight for her, for her for the good of all, basically. I like that, and in doing that, we see her immediately terrified in the obvious face of this Witch King. Like, this thing is just standing before her, twice her height almost, the Morning Star bigger than her entire torso, flinging it round. She's not like in the more modern context, you get the kind of Black Widow effect where someone can just be an action heroine and just kicking ass and not taking any damage, not facing
fall through like 3,000 skies.
Exactly, just land and get up again
and be be Superwoman and
exactly. There's none of that here. That you see the fear, you see the strain, you see the effort involved, you see the broken arm. Like she's obviously struggling against what has been set up as this titanic force of evil, and yet holds her ground, holds her place. She's not just doing it for the sake of the larger morality of the thematic situation. She's doing it to protect what she sees as a father figure, like right behind her. She's planting her feet here, no father, etc. And she's defeating him. With the context of, I am no man, which is a cheesy as hell line, but in a story like Lord of the Rings, and with the context and the due diligence of setting it up.
I mean, Tolkien, that's straight from Tolkien's writing. So,
it works. It's perfect. You've done the due diligence to make this earned, and it's not just a case of, haha, I'm not a man. It's no, I'm not what you're expecting, and that's the kind of the mistake of evil. It's you have assumptions about this that have now led to your downfall again, and here's the punishment for it. plunge through the face.
Yeah.
Also, lore-wise, Merry has just stabbed him with the barrow dagger, which undoes the binding a little bit. So it's like twofold reason for why this works mechanically.
I also like the effect of like his body like crumpling in on himself as his energy fades away. It's a neat effect, and I like the fact that they differentiate his death from other creatures like that. So that's interesting too.
I keep randomly thinking of Denethor wandering around like a toddler with a dirty diaper in the middle of us, just like when he's really losing it. I can't stop.
My line has ended.
Yeah.
Bring me wood and oil.
Yeah.
And the fact that he never notices that his son is still alive for whatever reason.
Yeah, just completely.
Well, he kind of does at like the end, like the very last minute there, but it's too late because he's already like about to be.
Gandalf charging in with Shadowfax, and Shadowfax kicks him into the fire.
There is absolutely nothing subtle about anything to do with
that's a
Denethor's
little
story.
much.
But you said before during breaking the recording, Matt, you mentioned Gandalf's line, so ends Denethor, the son of Ecthelion.
So passes Denethor, son of Ecthelion.
Yeah, it's such a great line, and there's that somber sadness
badass
in it.
Names. Yeah, he's sad for him. He's sad because he's like, this guy's nuts, but
he's sad, but also so done. Like, I don't have time to feel bad about this guy right now, but also, it is a shame. And just watching him run a marathon and on fire after that.
I mean, he knew him. He knew him when he was a better person. So I mean, it makes sense.
It's a great
regret there.
It's a great heroic thing for Pippin to do because he's the one that heaves Faramir out of the would-be fire or funeral pyre.
Saves the line of stewards. Yeah, because Faramir will go on to
and he's
he can get with Eowyn, right?
Yeah. I find it again.
I'd actually forgotten that was a thing until I rewatched this film. Like the fact that they do end up together, but it's like they just have that one sequence when they're both. I mean, it's a nice scene when they're just standing together and they're recovering and stuff. But it's like then they're immediately together, like by the end, and we don't see much follow up. It's like theme again. It's not bad. It's just like it's a little awkward.
I really love the themes behind it because it's a story of him kind of being the Aragorn figure, being one of the true men of the setting and rising to the kind of the glory of old, and the fact that she represents.
Well, I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm not saying he doesn't earn the sequence.
No, for sure. But I'm with you. It's a weird because from just the film perspective, Eowyn is basically woken up, has gone, I can't have Aragorn anymore. Oh, look, here's another perfectly handsome paragon of men that I can latch onto. It feels
he literally just kind of walks in as
and she's just like, hello, look at you. Like you can't exactly blame it. It feels funny. Like it's the fact that it's gone from like being in love with Aragorn to being in love with Faramir straight away. But in the larger story, with more time going past, as is happening in the books, and what the characters represent for the story and the cultures and all that stuff, it really works. But yeah, it is funny on film, just in that short space of time.
Yeah, to be fair, it's not nearly as awkward as in like the original like theatrical release because in that it's like you don't have that scene, and I think they're just there like when he's crowned and they're holding hands. It's like what? When did this happen?
It is even funnier.
Wait, am I wrong on that? Like, is that this sequence when they're together in like that recovery room and they're watching everyone like go? Is that not in the theatrical version?
I think that's extended because I'd forgotten about the fact that he did.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
I vaguely recall jokes being made about the fact that she has just latched onto him in the coronation.
Yeah. So that was a thing because like in the original, they're just holding hands during Aragorn's coronation, and that's it. It's like when did this happen? Like okay, so you get a little bit of context. It's still a little awkward,
and it's funny and it's great pairing and it matches and it fits the theme. And it's funny, but just in the film, it's quite funny.
I'm not saying they're not. I'm not saying they're not good for each other. It's just like there wasn't much build up to it.
Yeah, particularly because she's been given Aragorn the doe eyes the entire trilogy. It's like she's been completely smitten head over heels, and it's like, oh, hello, consolation prize.
I mean, they've both been through a lot of shit at this point.
Exactly.
So,
Well, and the House of Healing, days go past, months and stuff to recover. So it's spending a lot of time together. Anyway, that's all book stuff. Where do we want to jump to next? We're going to have to get to Frodo and Sam at some point, but I guess the Black Gate scenario...
You want to just do that? You want to do that now before we get to the Black Gate?
Yeah. Obviously, everything about the setup for the Black Gate is they're going to then buy Frodo and Sam time. They've obviously been for quite a journey since the beginning of the film.
I mean, we haven't really mentioned Shelob at this point, the Shelob sequence.
Yeah, everything that was set up with the end of film 2. She could do it. It's turning that comedic kind of look past the branch that we talked about last time. It's just we get a cap of that in the start of this film, didn't we? With the pond scene.
Well, I love that sequence because it's the fact that it's the famous sequence is the first time he does it, like with the arguing with himself and threatening himself and leaving, and he's gone, But this one, visually speaking, is just so they talked about the fact that they'd sharpened the technology even between films, so that the one like the way that they could get his facial musculature, particularly around the eyes, just really dialed in. I mean, and the fact that he can see himself kind of like he's looking at it just adds to the illusion. It's just such a weirdo, and the fact that Sam kind of wakes up in the middle of this and is seeing that, it's just such a wonderful sequence. I love it.
The choice of the having dropped the stone as well and seeing Sam
the stone before Sam comes in,
resolve into the background. It's perfect. Every decision made is brilliant there.
Can I just say, like, when I was younger and I first saw this movie, I remember being so frustrated when like Frodo and Sam had like they're falling out because with Gollum, like I was like, no, he's tricking you, don't fall for it. I remember being so frustrated because I understand that like the ring is playing a part of it too and stuff. So it's all well and good, but I just remember as a kid being like, no, don't leave. He's gonna double cross you.
That was the thing also because that it wasn't that overt really in the book. Like they definitely kind of invented that or at least put it like
it was another book purist issue, but I didn't like that.
Yeah, it was they did it because, as I said, they sensed that the film was just dragging. Like in adaptation, everything was just kind of bump, like moving along and ho hum, like before you get to the big giant fight. So they wanted as much drama as you could possibly, pack in there. But yeah, it does kind of come at the expense of, I think I talked about it last time, but there's a bit that Tolkien really was fond of, where he had written that Sam kind of wakes up in the middle of like what is almost a redemptive human moment for Gollum, where he's kind of like it's kind of told in my memory, the way he writes, it's sort of third person omniscient kind of, but it doesn't really feel like it's from any particular character's perspective. It's kind of like the all-knowing narrator telling you that this is what Gollum was almost on the verge of doing when like Sam woke up and scared him off or insulted him or spooked him or accused him of just no goodery. And it's kind of that what triggers a relapse, in they're never going to trust me, or like this one sucks or whatever. But in this, it's more no, he just got caught being shady as fuck, and then Sam has anger issues and flew into a rage, apparently. So it is kind of you do what you need to do to keep the plot, but I mean, that's not even the end of it, because you have the crumbs on its jackets like scene, like that's the real, like, oh my god, like I got the smoking gun now. Crumbs on his jackets is like unforgivable.
And poor Sam has to climb all the way down those stairs, to go all the way back up again. That is a long ass time.
In the entire trilogy.
He's gone so far down, and also when he falls, my god, he's looking at him break his neck on that stuff. I really feel the impact of that oof as he lands on the stone. Painful. Very well done.
Very well. It's very.
But hobbits are resilient, right? They
can bounce around. Exactly.
But then we get, obviously to Shelob's cave and the big double cross, who no one saw coming. I'm just joking, but like it's a cool sequence, like with the bones and stuff. I think we mentioned this too.
That was another reason they did it, because they felt that it was much scarier that Frodo be alone, because in the books they're both together during this sequence. So
I will say this does eventually lead into one of the few bits of dialogue in this film that I don't really care for, and that's the one where like the orc finds Frodo's being frozen, and he just kind of monologues to the other orcs while Sam is in earshot. It's like, oh, he's not dead, and the spider's venom just poisons. Like it's very kind of like ham-fisted. Okay, how do we make sure that he knows that Frodo isn't actually dead? But the fact that he's just kind of speaking out loud these things that they should all already kind of know, it's a little it's I don't know, like I would have written that a
Yeah.
little differently because it's one of the few instances that really in this entire trilogy where like the dialogue feels kind of ham-fisted, and
It's
I get why they had
expedience.
to do that. I get what they're
Yeah.
doing, and I get why they had to do it. It's just like, okay, like uh, I can really
Is it
feel like
because
the writer behind the orc in that sequence, you know. So it's a little awkward.
Yeah,
is it because Sam thought he was dead, so that's
yeah,
to
it
give
stands
Sam an
out more.
Yeah,
idea that you still have something
exactly.
to do? Yeah.
Yeah.
So and also I like in my memory, I think there's a slightly different version of that conversation where like the orcs just casually mention that they're used to seeing Gollum skulk around here. Like he thinks he's slick, but we know we don't know what he's doing. But he's always like flitting around, sneaking around because he's formed that relationship with Shelob
Right.
over time, and he thinks he's like spooky and like like nobody he's stealthy and nobody knows the ways like he does. And like there's just a couple of orcs like at the water cooler, like, hey, it's that little thing again. Look at that. Look what he's doing.
Right.
What's he doing this time?
No,
It's really
that's
funny.
fine. Yeah, that's fine. It's like but it's the Venom talk when they're standing over
I know.
Frodo.
Yeah,
and
no, I'm talking about the book.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
for sure. But with that, even though because I agree, it's never bothered me personally. But you're right in technical terms, it's expedience. It's they need to get the story, keep moving, give Sam hope, give the whole clarification of where they're going to be going. You're right. It's very. You can tell the writer is here.
It feels the least naturally integrated out of all those other similar scenes throughout the trilogy, which is why to me it really stands out, because it's like literally like, why are you saying this out loud in this way to these guys who clearly already know what the deal is? It's like it's the classic, like, like when you're reading a book and like someone or watching a movie and someone says, well, as you know, it's like it's kind of a lazy excuse to kind of just get that exposition in there. So it's I say lazy with a big asterisk, obviously, in this sequence. It's just, again, it's the most obvious. Not that it's terrible, not that it breaks the sequence. It's just, to me, it's like, okay, probably could have used a little bit of a rewrite.
Just to spin into something positive, because I think we've skated right past it. I love the actual confrontation with the spider and Sam. I think that's one of the most like fantastical kind of like elements of the story. Like that really feels like hero's journey stuff. Like,
exactly.
Because Sam is like kind of the hero, really, like more so than Frodo is,
right.
Like in a lot of ways. And the fact that like Galadriel's gift is
I was going to say, I also immediately
perfect,
before that with the Frodo having collapsed into the grass, I absolutely love that beat with Galadriel, where she's kind of lifting up and giving him that when all of the lights go out. That's such a beautifully poetic, and we talked about in the previous film with the first one rather, with the sound beat to it, the track that plays, that purely divine elegance there that kind of pulls him and uplifts him and gives him that sense of just that little bit more energy, just keep on going, dig deep, keep powering through this absolutely horrifying nightmare scenario in the worst possible place in the world, with completely alone, having just abandoned your friend. Like it's a full-on kind of fight through, keep going, and when you're going through hell, keep going kind of moment. But then immediately, like you said, Matt, sets up that hero's moment for Sam, having picked up the lights. There's an ebb and flow to the fight. Like the physicality of it's very well paced out within its own situation, but it's uplifting Sam and putting him into that seat where he's fully able to show, hey, I'm going to carry you from now on, Frodo. This is we'll get there. I got you.
Yeah, and I will say, as frustrated as I was when I first watched this as a kid, seeing the falling out, when he comes back, you're like, I was definitely feeling that moment.
The power
too.
of friendship.
It's classic. It's very much like in Aliens when Ripley comes back in like the mechno suit and it's like, get away from her, you bitch. It's very much.
Speaking of, I've been trying to get Callan to watch those movies so we can Fanalyze those, and he is dragging his feet. So that is one of the greatest moments in cinematic history, and that this is a near equivalent to that very similar beat. But yeah, you want to talk about something that Callan missed out on as a kid? You didn't watch any of those movies.
I've only ever seen the first one, and then very late in life. But yeah, no,
as an adult,
I'll definitely get that.
Since we've known each other.
Yes, I think it was 2018, 2019. I think I watched it.
Basically,
so
just
super
happened.
late.
Oh,
but so I definitely need to go through those films, and we'll finalize those at some point, if for no other reason than making me watch them. But yeah, great comparison though, Evan. That's definitely the same vibe, because I've seen obviously glimpses of that sequence. it's it's a great moment. The whole thing with Shelob is fantastic. The breakup with Gollum as well, with the fact that this is the final reveal to him that we're on a mission to destroy this thing. Like what? I didn't know that. I like that as because there was
a smart change.
Yeah,
because that's a change from the book.
Yeah, because that was they were at risk of getting a bit of a repetitive scenario with this now, because we're seen as viewers, we've seen Gollum go through the motions a few times. We've seen him arguing with himself. He's now arguing with Frodo. We're constantly seeing that flipping flopping between the two perspectives, and how obviously deceitful he is in this moment. But then having that quiet moment where they just kind of just both feeling as tired as they are and worn out. It's like, we've got to destroy it, Smeagol, we've got to. And then he's like, what? He's not realised, and you get that change of flavour to kind of reinvigorate the moment again and make it not the same storied scene that we've seen over and over again and we'll see later on. And from that then point on, it's just, there's no little hope with him. Leaps off, sends him down the crag, gives him that.
Although how he survived that is amazing. Like,
well, I mean, he can survive so much. He's a durable little skeletal creature, empowered by the ring.
That is a fall to one's death if I've ever seen.
Yeah,
he does get one eventually, of course.
Yeah.
But he gets
does anyone
like,
oh yeah, like the Joker.
The Joker can survive anything.
Yeah, exactly.
He's been punched into a smokestack off a train before.
Anyone who's seen Batman the Brave and the Bold, they even kind of like poke fun at that in one episode. If you know, you know.
Yeah, they poke fun at a lot of good things in that show. But we get the slightly. I remember the video game level for this because it was great. With Sam fighting his way through the tower. It's obviously, again, for the sake of experience, we're running out of time.
I never played the game.
It's a fantastic game. Return of the King is a fantastic game. But we've obviously running out of time in the film. We've got to get to the end point of the story. So I get they've got to rush things through a little bit, but it's a shame. It's not even a shame because it's not a big problem, but it is technically a little bit rushed to sequence the fact that he can make his way all the way up to the tower and back down again, because there happens to be a fight at this exact moment when he arrives to exploit, etc. They all happen to kill each other or leave. It's a bit, hand wave, move on, who cares? And we get the reunion of the two at the top of the tower, which I think is quite powerful. And Sam is the second person in the whole of history to ever voluntarily relinquish the ring. So that was a very well done moment, and
of course he had it for about
he only had it for like 5 minutes. So narratively speaking, granted it's probably like half a day or whatever.
He is a ring bearer,
but he is technically a ring bearer, and he does that
his
journey.
So there's that.
It gets him into the Undying Lands eventually.
Exactly, easiest pass of any of the ring bearers for sure. but he relinquishes it. It's interesting because you get that struggle still. Like you still see that it is an effort, and obviously it's going to be less of an effort than anyone else because, like you said, he had it for such a short time. But they sell it well
because the ring knows what they're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's closer. Yeah, it knows it's closer in terms of time and distance to the threat from its perspective, etc. The tension is driven up, and from memory they also do a similar effect to how they show at the start of the film with Smeagol as well and Eagle. There's that kind of similar kind of strain, but Sam manages to let go. Very powerful, showing the struggle but also showing the surmounting of it despite the stakes. Difficult to do in a short time.
That's a good point because the ring instantly ensnared Smeagol, and Sam had it longer than that, so it does show the power of his spirit, like the kind of heroic spirit there.
Exactly.
So that's a good point.
Exactly.
Can I just say I don't want to jump too far ahead, but when they get into like the orc armor and are going through the things, this has always bothered me.
I mean, we can get into that now. There's not much.
The amount of time. Like the amount of time that Sam held on to those damn pots and pans. I mean, like that's always been like my number one. Like really?
Dude, hobbits and their food, man. They're dedicated.
Yeah.
Into Mordor at that point. Does it look like there's anything to fucking eat? I mean, like, what are you cooking? Like you're just adding weight to it.
The water in particular
they're in
as
armor
well.
and everything by that point.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the fact they keep going on.
That's always been like my little pet peeve. It's like get rid of those pots and pans way before this point. Like, we don't need those. Yeah.
But yeah, the fact they're running out of water, obviously, and trying to make their way across the plains. We get the much more earned, narratively speaking, but the fact that all of these armies, like, we can't make our way through that, and they happen to move off because of obviously the efforts of other heroes and other characters. So that's all completely fine. But this was whenever I get to this point, I've never feel particularly interested. This is a scene I think was deservedly cut from the theatrical release with the orcs and the chain and everything. I get that they, in world, logically have to explain the difficulties of making it through this, even with a lot of the armies spilling out. I get that it's not, you don't want to get to Mordor and have that be the easiest part of the journey. But to me, that initial kind of interaction with the orcs always felt a little bit dull, because you kind of know where it's going to get to after that point, and when they're going to get to the real struggle. So it's kind of it never really worked for me. I didn't miss that in the theatrical version. Whenever I've had to flip back and forth for whatever reason, going to like the orchestra and stuff. So yeah, I think that was one thing that I never missed.
Yeah, I agree. I think also one of the reasons it doesn't really hit as strongly is because we had a sequence almost exactly like this in Two Towers with Merry, Pippin, and the Uruk-hai and all that. And the
similar.
At night. So the fact that we had a scene so similar to this, so we could kind of easily tell where it's gonna go already. Kind of, I think that's also part of the diminishment as well. So I agree with that one.
Yeah.
But to your same point though, when they finally like get through going through Mount Doom and all that, like just the pure exhaustion on their faces, and the fact that they're like their clothes and like their face,
their cracked lips and everything.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my gosh, you feel just how drained they are. During the sequence. We'll get back more to it obviously when we get to the absolute climax, but this is the beginning of that. And they do a great job of just showing the desolate nature of not just Mount Doom, but just Mordor in general. And I really like the energy of the place is just so like all the light just drained from you and everything.
And as we said earlier, this is basically day one of filming for them. This is really early in the process for them as actors. So it's really well handled. They've done a really good job of that.
That whole bit, I don't know why, but like more so than a lot of the war scenes or the battle scenes, what I really mean to say, more than like the run up to actual battles or sieges like Helm's Deep or what we just had at Minas Tirith. This feels more like war to me. Like these guys are like tired, like they're trudging forth, they're barely like still with it, they're exhausted. It just feels so true in like in a haunting way. It's like really, really sad and difficult and just like
This is Tolkien channeling his trench experience for sure. Like that carrying of people, friends and comrades across the Somme as they're working their way through the mud. It's the relationship between the two. Sam and Frodo was supposed to be in kind of indicative of that experience that he went through. So yeah, it makes sense that kind of vibe is captured. But you're right. We get a lot. It's not glossed over by any means in any of the other aspects of the story. But it's supposed to be like the good v evil, the kind of the
oh yeah, no,
climactic.
Like, not that the other stuff is bad.
But I want to mean. But you're right that this is where you get to see the good grit. You get to see that because you don't need that on top of everything else going on in the rest of the story. You need to have that kind of hero's valiant last stand vibe there. But here you get to sit in the horrible, murky, just hellish aspect. And
especially in a movie that just had like Legolas doing the stuff he was doing, it's nice to see something like this. Like really grounded and like reminding you that this is awful.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that, do we want to kind of go like rewind to the Mount Doom and the gates of Mordor and
Black
stuff?
Gate.
Yes,
Black Gate. Thank you.
Yeah.
The mouth. We see the mouth of Sauron, obviously.
Yadimundi, that guy. Yeah.
Great choice with the mouth.
It's the same actor. It's
Is it? I don't know. I didn't know that.
It's the guy who played Yadimundi.
He's known for his tall heads.
I actually didn't know that. That's incredible. Wow.
The mouth choice in particular was
so
fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah,
so
such a brilliant choice. They had to make it
and his
unique
voice
and
too, like
and distinct from everything else. Yeah, and the voice choice and just. People complain about the fact that he, Aragorn cuts this guy's head off with like, it's not on the flag of parley, messenger. Aragorn wouldn't do that. And yes, technically correct within the law, whatever. Who cares? This is a much more. Awesome. Look at this guy. Like this is not like a standard guy. This is a sorceress lieutenant of the Dark Lord Sauron. This is
the whole the entire character is just there to talk shit and make you feel like you've already lost.
Yeah, like, exactly. Of course you fight.
He's a messenger of peace and parley. It's like he brought out the Mithril. Like we killed his ass. He's dead, Gandalf. I mean,
so flamboyant as well. Like,
yeah,
he's giving kind of Voldemort in the Ministry vibes, but that with his delivery.
Yeah. But you could actually kind of take this a little bit more seriously, only a little bit though. But what I will say
about that in so long.
That for good reason. But another thing too, like the little character beats, the fact that Gandalf kind of offers a parlay to the mouth of Sauron as like, your lord he will depart these lands never to return. I mean, I feel like he knew damn well that he wasn't just gonna pack up and leave, but the fact that he kind of that final offer, like, you can leave these lands and just, rot in your own, corner of darkness. Like the fact that he even attempted that. I mean, I think that, I don't know, a little, you could read into that with a little bit of characterization too, because
also kind of maybe like both sides are bluffing a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like he's not exactly bringing his best here. It's the diminished army and everything.
Yeah.
We're knackered and exhausted.
True.
You know? So, but I like what you're saying. The flavor of it is good. It's good authoring evil and out again, which is such an important part of the Tolkien kind of message.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything to say about the battle itself? I mean, it's big and epic, like everything else up until this point. Choreography is fantastic. I mean, it's literally just everything we've been building to up until now. I mean, I think it is worth noting too. It's like, famously, one thing that was cut from the films was that Sauron himself was actually going to participate in this, like in a physical form, and he was going to be fighting Vigo. That's actually that big troll that he fights, like in this sequence, that was originally supposed to be Sauron. That's also part of the reason that like Aragorn seems so like taken aback by it when the troll comes after him.
Yeah,
it's like, wait a minute. Yeah. So what are our thoughts on that? Because obviously that would be a massive departure from the original lore.
I'm very glad they didn't have it be Sauron. That would have completely undercut the entire presence of him throughout the rest of the story if he could do that. And why hasn't he turned up before, etc. Lots of different questions.
Also, why wouldn't he just be hanging out in front of Mount Doom? Just to stop anybody.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, the idea is that he hasn't thought that was going to be a risk at that point, I suppose. But even then,
I know
it's just
like the whole thing. Like if you start asking these questions, why
exactly.
Would he not be,
Like, so I'm completely glad about that. But also, I've never really liked the troll fighting the Aragorn deflecting the strike from the troll. To me, has always been like, oh god, come on.
It's a little awkward.
I like the charge. I like the for Frodo.
Yeah, exactly. That's the true grit. The battle here is all surplus to requirements anyway, because it's only more of what we've seen before. There's no upping of quality here. It's just another fight. The stuff that makes this work is the message behind it, the story, the characters, the fact that it's for Frodo and the Pippin and Merry charging first and being immediately overtaken. That's the stuff that everyone remembers.
That's so good. That's one of the best shots. Like, narratively, this isn't about anything. This is like a visual medium. This is like when you're watching like the fuse to the dynamite start sprinkling down or something while you're waiting for like somebody to save the day. That's what it is. Like the real action is with the hobbits at that point.
Exactly.
But I love Merry and Pippin like immediately.
Just the first ones to answer the call. For Frodo, of course it is. It's so brilliant. It ties into all of the Fellowship kind of messaging that we've slightly lost in the first film. They're brilliant, don't get me wrong, but in the book, one of the strongest parts of the things they didn't have as much time to spend on in the first film was the idea of these four as friends, close friends, and people who would go out and on this journey together by choice and not just happenstance, which is kind of alluded to a bit more in the films. So this was kind of that capturing that spirit and showing they're going to charge for their friend first, answering the cry of Aragorn. But also the comedy, just the realism but comedy and just charm of then immediately seeing them overtaken by everyone else was really good. Also, like mentioned for things like Derpy, get Gimli here in the scene because there's a shot of him just completely looking off his head in this little occasional continuity errors and stuff like that has to be mentioned because cinematic charm. But like you said, it's about Frodo and Sam here. This is just kind of the backdrop for it.
There's also, though, I think it's worth pointing out to Aragorn's speech. Obviously, a lot of people have talked about that. A day may come when the courage of men fail.
But it is not really this day.
Yeah.
That holds particularly true in the modern age right now.
And with me, Men of the West. I mean, that's all. I mean, again, like any doubts you had about like him being a king is just completely shattered at this point. I mean, it's really well done, and I think Vigo really does sell the hell out of that speech. He's really putting his spirit, all of his spirit into it. I think it's
my favorite. Crazy. My favorite bit with him is still his goodbye scene with Sean Bean, Boromir. But like I think that's like still some of his better work. But this is like right beneath that. It's really perfectly done speech.
When the effects around as well when he turns and like you hear that the kind of the Gandalf perspective of what's about to happen here as he falls and not really believing it but just checking it, and you can kind of see him bated breath kind of moment, and then the turn as the head tilts and you see the eye behind him. And this like slight shriek and silence, and it's just the single muttered for Frodo. Like it's not a cry, it's not a war cry, it's just a for Frodo. And it's like yes, and you can feel the energy. If anyone who watches in the cinema was just feeling that kind of that pulse of just yes from everyone as that immediately gets visually represented by the charge. It's such a beautiful cinematic moment on top of a massive pile of cinematic moments in this trilogy.
and it's a nice juxtaposition too to the intro of the first movie, because it's alliance of, there's elves and men, and he's also wielding a reforged version of the same sword that obviously cut the ring from Sauron's finger at the beginning. So it's nice little roundabout sort of way of like, seeing where, this is where it started, this is where it ends. It is what it is, sort of thing.
He won't take the bait, and then I think he will, and holds the blade up and like, you see, look at this, I've got the blade that the blade that cut the ring from your hand has been reforged.
It sets all aside. It's great that he makes a choice there that actually affects something. Like that's really good.
It's really important. Yeah.
And even just the design of that sword, it just looks
beautiful.
It looks pretty epic, yeah.
And the fact it's been getting renamed as well. It's not just the same sword. It's not the Shards of Narsil now. It's Reforged Andril. Flame of the West. It's taking his energy and persona into it. It's not going to be his heir, or he's not going to be his ancestor.
I was literally about to say that. You're Isildur's heir. But not him.
Isildur himself. Has the line.
Yes. Oh, it's fantastic.
This story is so perfectly crafted. I love it. But let's talk about Mount Doom, because obviously we're rounding up now.
Yeah, the real climax.
Yes.
Again, we get to again, we talked about them being all disheveled and broken, and it's like they're just barely. It's like it's Luke Skywalker versus Vader on Bespin when he's all just effed up from the fight at the end.
Taken up a notch. Like this is so much more difficult to watch. Like this shit like
you do feel it, don't you? You really feel like you're climbing that mountain with them, and just that sheer like, God, I can't go on.
So huge, and it's insane.
Desolate,
not just the visual effects for this, and again,
and also the fact that like Frodo does give up, and it's kind of like Sam,
I can't go on.
That's I'm not dogging on Frodo there. It's like it really took the two of them to make it. It's just it's really like.
I can't carry you.
The physical weight of the ring. That line is that's like the Oscar-winning moment right there from people's perspective at the time. But the ring itself, you feel the weight of it. Like they're not doing too much to belabor the point.
Like the bruising.
Exactly. And just the sheer, like you said, the desolation of the skin, everything's being they're not belaboring the point with like long lingering shots on the ring or anything at all. You barely see it in the sequence, but it's just you feel from the performance that kind of sheer weight and the sense of burden that this is, for both of them, but Frodo particularly. And then it sells the delivery of that moment with the I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you, and it's another one by those punch the air moments in the cinema. Everyone's like, yes, with the music
we
flowing.
Didn't talk much about like Sam and like the previous discussions. We were always talking about other stuff, but he just like that's why it's not fair to like call anything the best performance because everyone's turning in such great work. But he's really like like that's a star moment right there. It's just like the facial acting too. Even when they're not talking, they just look so full of like despair or determination. In this case, like it's so perfect, so sold in the eyes and the face and everything else.
And just a tiny obviously on top of that, but the hair as well, when they're plastered to the skin from sweat, but also the way they've probably got like a fan going to blow it slightly in when he's showing that kind of desperation expression. It's like it's just tiny little micro details that are just all layered in to help sell this piece as like this is a fraught moment.
And to think this all started with them just celebrating Bilbo's birthday.
And now they've forgotten the they've forgotten the taste of strawberries, and they can't recall the color of the feel of grass. And it's just that fact that it's that leaning into that aspect of desperation and depression, and the idea of they have lost hope almost. Sam is clinging to it, but Frodo has basically lost hope, and like he's playing into the language in the book as well. Just in the dark, flailing in the dark. It's so powerfully executed, all to have them kind of that rising moment where Sam carries on him with the swell of the music and the chorus is climbing Mount Doom with Frodo literally on his back, and then fucking Gollum appears again.
Speaking of Gollum, like the whole forgotten like the taste of strawberries and stuff. It could also be seen as a callback to the beginning with Gollum being not remembering like the taste of bread or his own name and stuff. It's
the sound of birds,
sound of birds, Like he fell to it, but they're not going to fall to it, which is such a it's a character moment.
And why are they not? Because friendship, because camaraderie,
not to get too off course, but that's one of the great things about the riddles in the dark chapter. The riddles Gollum asks, the answers to them are the things he's been surrounded by for so long. It's like time, dark, like wind, those are the only things he's known for so long, and all of Bilbo's questions are these things, like egg. It's like, eggs is like I barely remember what those are, but yeah, like you have to go the sun on the daisies. He's like, those things are so far gone. It's perfect fairy tale writing.
It's exactly it's focusing on the physical and the complete strip of joy, and
this is like mythic power, right? Because I've said before, these characters, when I think about like a normal drama, like these characters don't really fit the bill for like real, or like they're not dealing with reality that we know. They're relatable, and they're great characters. They're not real people. They don't really feel that way. You somehow don't really go to, like, you don't think about like the sex life of a hobbit or an elf,
exactly,
really, you know what I mean? It's
exactly.
like you don't deal with too much reality with these, but like the mythic power, for example, like this is like it's all the way up at this. The dials cranked all the way. It's perfect. Love it.
So Sam manages to get Gollum down and carry them on up. You see Frodo kind of
He
Frodo
survived!
does manage to get so shock horror. Frodo does manage to kind of rally that last bit of energy and just throw himself forward and go running along the pathway towards the throwing the ring down. Just a note: one of the only egregiously terrible CGI shots is Sam running into the over to the position of the mountain. You see him sliding like nobody's business on that floor. Minor gripe, obviously. This film is incredible in all ways, but yeah, it's funny when you notice the gaps because they are so few and so not important. And but yeah, that was one of them for me that I always kind of chuckle at. But yeah, and we get the climactic scene
with Isildur and Elrond. Obviously,
Frodo fails.
Yes. No. The ring is mine. Like, it just, oh god. And
poor
Sam is like, really? We got this far and now you give up? It's like, it's right there. Just let it go. I love the fact that we don't get that. Obviously I joke about it, but we don't get that flavor of exasperation and frustration. It's just it's like heartbreak. It's I've lost my friend moment kind of thing. It's
very
played
powerful
very
with
well.
the facial acting. I can't praise it enough.
And the confrontation with Gollum and Frodo, I think, is an improvement on what's in the book.
Absolutely.
Like a major improvement. It's one of the few areas where I always just felt a little bit like this is rather lame. Because in the book, like Gollum just kind of gets it and dances his way, like does a happy joy, and like falls off the cliff.
Yeah, it's one of the few.
It's like this.
He mentions it in his letter. I think it's mentioned in one of his letters somewhere that it's like a few kind of alluded nod that Tolkien kind of gives them, maybe kind of agreement to the fact that.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but from reading online, I think that there is enough to say that he's kind of given a wink, maybe, but not really confirming it because he doesn't want to make the definitive choice on this. But just kind of like that's certainly something that might have happened, that kind of thing. I think don't nail me to the ground on that one. But yeah, in acknowledgement of what I'm saying here is that Iluvatar made one of his extremely rare little like nudges and just okay, good, please, not bad result, and just
but this is so much stronger for so many reasons.
This is way stronger,
not least because it is kind of like Sauron getting the better of himself. Like, these people will fight over the thing. It's to its end. You know what I mean? To the bitter end.
It's evil defeating itself again. It perfectly ties into the overall themes. And again, it would not have happened if Frodo hadn't spared Gollum. Gollum would not have been here to do this had he not spared him. So it ties perfectly into the underlying theme throughout the story.
Or Bilbo back in the Hobbit.
Exactly. As we mentioned earlier. It's the decisions of good people, like the small decisions, as Gandalf would say, of everyday folk. That adds up to be the ultimate conclusion of the self-destructing self-destruction that is evil, which I think is very true to life as well. Like, this kind of flailing around.
I sure hope so. We could.
We could use a little bit more self-destruction right now for sure. It's coming. It will come. The day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day. I stand by that to the death.
But also like him, obviously, like him biting off his finger, like the gore we see, like that's brutal for starters. And then, and also, this is also they also cut back at one point because when he puts the ring on, the Nazgul suddenly sends him, so they're coming towards.
I love that they all turn
it's like
face in midair.
The sound effect that plays with the screech almost kind of represents the turn as well. Like, it's perfectly kind of shown as pulled straight into it, and you sense the fear and desperation.
And the eye looks
Sauron is said,
he's like,
they're about to kill me. We're all about to die. Just
the eye, you see the light go over, go over the opening too. That's
it's so violently snaps to it. Like it's because we've seen obviously the spotlight before now, and the hilarious Frodo kind of crumbling moment where he sort of camply falls down to the ground, etc. It's all tying together so nicely. We haven't also talked about the Eagles, which we will have to talk about in a moment when Frodo is saved by them. But
my position is pretty simple. I don't buy it, Mr. Tolkien. Ride the damn Eagles, ride them Eagles.
Pretty much.
We just get there in 5 minutes, please. Yeah, no. But I get it because of the power of the ring and the fact that it's so resistant. That's one reason why I can buy this whole thing works really well. But the Eagles just. It's never gonna not be funny. Come on.
It is just a funny reference.
Couldn't we have at least cut the journey in half? At least flown us like
like they did in The Hobbit, right? Just have the idea that
everyone's parodied that to hell and back too.
Yeah, so exactly.
It just kind of is what it is. But the death of Gollum too, we should talk about that. Him going over after the struggle and stuff. I mean, and the actual destruction of the ring too. I mean, I actually like that they don't linger on it too much. Like it's in the lava, but then it just melts, and that's it. Like you don't need to make this super long, drawn out shot as it slowly melts and music. But it's nope, that's just it. It's destroyed, and then
so evil fades. Yeah. But also I like the kind of as it just landed on a rock and screwed everybody. It's just a comical little detail as a kid that I remember when it just got. You see the kind of the landmass, the magma kind of molten. Whatever you'd call that, char coming up from Gollum's remains effectively and clinging it to the lava, and it's like, oh god, is this thing gonna stick there and float and to be recovered later? I like that it just then, like you say, it just snaps and fades down into it. No, this is it. And a really good visual effect on Sauron's tower, Barad-dûr, detonating. That's a really really it holds up. Really holds up. And I love the effect of it blasting in a particular angle. It could have been just like a Death Star multi-angle thing, but the fact that it was and it flies away from where the ring was lost as well. The Mount Doom's direction is where it detonates it. It's very cool. And obviously the kind of hilarity of the cracks and casting and chasing the evil forces of evil and the forces of good. Gandalf's there, hand wave, problem solved. he fought the shockwave with his powers, whatever, who cares? And it's the thematic power. It's all of this visually on screen is kind of raising eyebrows, but it's the thematic power of the story, and it's been earned enough where you just look at this and go, yeah, of course that's what happens. Evil collapses itself.
Yeah, and so much of that was just sustained by his will anyway. So when you take that away, it's just literally everything crumbles. I like too that the eye it just gradually fades into nothingness before that final shockwave and the collapses. I know in the book there's his spirit comes out as the shadow and goes up into the sky before it fades and stuff. I know that doesn't happen. It's the same. I feel like they got that same idea across as you see the eye slowly fade away anyway. So I don't think that's a big deal at all personally.
Absolutely.
I guess it just depends aesthetically what you might be into more, but I think both work personally.
Completely agree. It's a little bit more action beat this, action climax. But that fits what the medium, it's a difference between book and film for me. The kind of effect you're going for here and capturing that. But Gollum.
And the Eagles rescue Frodo and Sam.
We get but also we get the moment where I can remember the Shire. It's gone. It's done is the line. The sheer just relief of the burden having been lifted, but also the first hint of the quiet knowledge of the fact that he didn't fail, or he did fail rather. He wasn't the one who actually believed that he fell to the power of the ring. Ultimately, he was lost in that moment. It was chance that saved the day, not his own willpower. That lingers, and it's important that we establish that right away, just in a small detail, because that's what's going to be lingering in the expressions and the feeling and sensation we get for the rest of the many endings.
What do you mean? The Eagles pick them up and then roll credits.
Yeah, right. The thing that makes this the problematic, or the thing that really makes it drag on, is the fact that it's the fade to black, and we're back again. Is that a fade to black? That's what really makes it linger. Yeah,
you've always said, and you've always made a mention of the fact that the one in the hospital bed where everybody comes in is like the end of a play.
Yeah, exactly. It's literally it's a matinee. It's the end of it. Everyone's coming on doing taking a bow.
And it's just kind of funny, well, cheesy how they're all just laughing. And
Gandalf does that really awkward thing.
Perfect. Perfect acting there, Matt.
It's like, okay, like enough.
And Gimli's like, oh, as it runs in, it's like, oh god, it's literally that. Yeah,
I think Gimli's actually the easiest one to buy.
Yeah,
like,
no, for sure,
you know,
but they
that's
just
all.
and Legolas and Smart.
But then you got
It is literally they're coming out from on a theater stage and just giving their
They were
bows
just
to the
like
crowd.
hanging out right there, just
Yeah.
waiting. When's he waking up?
Yeah.
When's he waking up? When's he waking up? Is
And then Sam and Frodo having that. We haven't talked
Yeah.
about this, by the way, but this film really leans into the potentially non-platonic, even though it is obviously platonic situation with them. They are the most. I don't know how you'd phrase it, but they are very intense. They are very intense together.
When this show used when the movie used to play on like cable, like in the day, like when they would advertise they were going to do it, they'd show like they'd cut the film to cheesy pop songs like love songs or whatever to like really sell that. You know?
Oh god.
Yeah, like I mean, it like everybody was kind of in on this joke.
Yeah, it's obviously not. It is platonic. It's intended that way. That's what it is. But it's just the film really leans into the intensity aspect to make it so parodiable and so funny. Because just the long look is like, oh, Sam. It's just funny. But yeah, the fade in between the individual endings, that's what makes this as memorably memeable as it is. In fact, there's so many like, oh no, we're not finished, we're carrying on. And then the kind of the taking the bow.
You know, in fairness, it's true to the spirit of the book.
It is,
the Shire
for sure.
And a few of them, you definitely need like.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't get rid of any of them aside from the hospital.
Yeah, I was just saying.
Yeah,
I was just explaining. So
but you know, you're right. That is the most agreed. That's the. If you chose one, everyone would choose the bed scene to get rid of. I'm pretty sure. You needed the Fellowship reunion, but you could have done that in a very different way.
That was just so silly.
But we cut then to Aragorn's coronation. He becomes King Elisar and stuff.
Gets a song. Gets a karaoke king.
Yeah. He does an amazing job. Reunited with Arwen. That's amazing. The fact that he takes her in her arm. Takes her in his arms and stuff, and that's great. And of course, all punctuated by the whole "you bow to no one" scene, and everyone bows to the Hobbit. That's amazing.
The perfect humility of the king as well. It's represented. If the king bows, we all bow. Exactly. It's the perfect. Yeah, this is Aragorn. This is who he is. This is the humility of leadership. This is the strength. This is what being a leader means. This look at it, people. Do you get it? This is leadership. I'm making a very subtle hint. Also, I'm not saying that Peregrine and Meriadoc didn't earn it, obviously, because they did contribute. But it is really funny to me that they're put on the same pedestal. The looks on their face, they're kind of like, are we? Is he talking about us as well, or is it kind of a Frodo and Sam? Like they want to kind of sidle away.
Yeah.
I always found it funny that they're getting.
Hey. I know you're joking. One of them took down the Witch King.
Absolutely, they all contributed.
And the other one,
Pippin lit the beacons.
He was along
Pippin
for
lit the
ride
beacons.
everywhere.
And the Palantir, and Pippin did his part. And he saved Faramir, exactly right. He saved the line of stewards. So they all contributed. But it is funny how the kind of thematic point is it's the ring bearers that get the bow. But
and before that, I know it wasn't this movie, but like they got the ends to help with everything.
Exactly. They've definitely done their part. But it's just from the outside looking on, like who the fuck are these guys?
It should be like the Olympics where there should be like a gold.
Exactly. But it's just I'm only joking. It's a perfect moment. I absolutely adore what it represents in story crafting and
isn't
theme.
Isn't Elrond there to give Arwen away? Kind of like for the wedding.
Yeah. It's like wearing the crown as well.
That never bothered me as a kid when I just thought he was wise old elf dude. But like then when you found out like he could really throw down, it's like, where were you, man?
Yeah.
Why weren't you helping?
He was in the north.
He did his time in Hobbit, I
eyes.
guess, in those films. But I also
in the actors commentary track, one of the hobbits gives a lot of shit to Orlando for his little tiara that he's wearing. He's like, "What are you wearing, man?"
And we've said before, Elrond with the hairstyle as well. Like he was supposed to have a really wacky over the top hairstyle here, and he's like, "Let's dial that down a bit because that's just going to steal the scene."
Like he's from Naboo or something.
Yeah, exactly. And Legolas as well, when he's got his arm on the shoulder and he sort of gives like a nod, like, "Look who I brought," which is funny because they're a completely separate people. They're not just elves under one banner, right? Like Legolas is representing the woodland realm, and Elrond is from coming across the way with Rivendell and in Imladris. But it's just funny.
Is Galadriel there too? in that sequence? I forget.
No, Galadriel, because
so.
Frodo will never see her again, if you recall. Like, or Aragorn will never see her again, rather. It's
Okay,
she kind of makes that choice to diminish and go into the west, kind of. But
okay, that's what I
Frodo
was
sees her,
thinking.
obviously,
Yeah.
because of the Grey Heavens.
I do like that Gandalf too is the one who like actually crowns Aragorn. That's nice too.
Yes, very powerful.
It's also, you know, kind of it's kind of like the final tee off to his mission too. So
exactly, yeah, he's set things right. You know, the line of men is restored, or the line of
Is there an
Numenor, I guess.
outtake? Is there an outtake with Gandalf with the crown, and he says, "Now comes the day of the queen"?
Yes, there is. Yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
Ian McKellen being his absolutely fabulous self, and rocking that. Yeah, no, I'm not sure if it's the actual crown, but there's definitely a shot with him doing something like that.
Okay, okay.
May just be the hairdo or whatever. But yeah, no, I love that Gandalf is the one, you know, Mithrandir, and also we didn't mention it before. My God, Gandalf carried that siege. I mean, at the gates.
Oh yeah,
giving
sure.
that, you know, no matter what comes through that gate, you will stand your ground. Like, you are soldiers of Gondor. It's beautiful. And then obviously Denethor with the whole abandon your posts.
Like, I was just gonna say, why are you giving Denethor due credit? Like, Denethor was like the one bossing everything. Like, Gandalf was just helping.
Gandalf smacks him over the head and is like, prepare for battle. Like, they know who their true leader is. They know the current steward until Faramir, you know, takes his seat.
Well, you know what's so funny is because like we have all the cinematic tricks of like John Noble's voice, like echoing as he's going, "Abandon your posts, flee." But to them, it's just they're just watching some crazy person. Just like,
and yet they immediately listen. Yeah, Gandalf. Like, you see the follow up. Yeah, you see the follow up with Gandalf riding Halifax. Very different thing. Shadowfax. And screaming like, "Back to your posts, you know, fight!" Like, I love. Yeah, exactly. His whole thing.
He's like charging through
to the walls, to the walls, defend the walls. Yeah, just everything. Like, kill the. He's basically just micromanaging this entire siege, racing around. Like, I don't have time to go.
Work, you mean.
Exactly.
Look, he's the only wizard left who's committed to the mission, so he has to pull duty for all the other wizards.
Exactly. It's like, where's Radagast in all this? God damn it! Damn it! But yeah.
Also, obviously, you know, during the coronation scene, before we move on, it's worth pointing out, like, the tree of Kings is in full bloom now.
Yes,
you see
it's rekindled.
Petals come off.
Love it.
Gorgeous, by the way. That's brilliant. You know, good setup from before when we noticed like the first flower come off it.
And the color grading as well. Like, the whole city, they've turned up the lights. You know, they're showing that diminishment, and that shadow. Exactly, the brightness of it. It's just that they're keying into all these cinematic tricks to make us realize this is a new age. This is a restoration. This is like right being brought back to the world. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
literally.
The courage of men may fail, but it is not this day. And let's bring that to life as well.
Not. Yeah.
But
and then we want to get back
that's not the end of this story.
Exactly. We fade to black. And then we're back up again.
Back to the Shire.
And not even the last one. Yeah, we're still going to fade to black again. But we do. It's a Shire. The fulfillment
of
the trio.
Into it.
Like, exactly. It's the quiet.
Yeah. Well, him completing. He completes Bilbo's book, which I love. By the way, the fact that he not only finishes it, he puts like, okay, Bilbo wrote this and I wrote this. Obviously, you know, the intention of Tolkien from the get-go was like this whole story was like as if it was written by the hobbits. So I like the fact that they tie that into the real world sort of context as well. And it's nice that he finished Bilbo's story, because that was also the main tee up for all that. So that's all. Again, like, closing off. It's not just closing off his story, but Bilbo's as well, because they did do this. You know, it is all chained together, which is nice.
It's completing the circle. We're back in the Shire. You know, the journey's been completed. We've been there and back again. So it's the perfect the kind of
Sam finally asked Rosie out, and
exactly. That's the true resolution. You know, it's like, I thought I'd marry Rosie. Ask Rosie Cotton.
Yeah,
that's.
But again, when they're at the bar, and he's like, after everything you did, are you still nervous about asking her? It's like, and he goes up and does it, and
takes a drink, slams it down. Liquid courage. Let's go. Yeah, exactly.
And then immediately smash cuts to their wedding.
With I love the story behind it as well, behind the scenes, when they couldn't quite get the energy for it, and Viggo Mortensen just grabs Billy Boyd and gives him a massive kiss on the mouth. It's just like, just kind of shocked by it, to kind of bring out some of the tension away and alleviate it. I love that. And the best part of all this, of course, is Frodo. Look on his face when he sat at the table, and all of them, but Frodo in particular. They're home, but they're now a step apart from it all. They've kind of had that awakening and seen the rest of the world and what it's like out there, and what kind of true struggle means
like Bilbo before them.
I mean, I think we all feel about it in real life as well. We are all in many ways a step apart from some of the stuff that's going on out there.
Is the phrase.
Yeah.
We are the sum of our experiences, positive and negative, and we take them with us no matter where we go.
And all of the sayings, like a walk 100 miles, etc. It's greatest travel is a greatest teacher and all that kind of stuff. It's all encapsulated here by this ending. And the marriage with Rosie and Sam, we then fade black again because of course we do, and we get the Grey Havens. The story behind the Grey Havens recording is always really funny to me because they had to redo this entire emotional tear-jerking sequence like 3 times. Once because of Sean Astin forgot to wear the correct waistcoat. They went on a break between shots and came back with the wrong one, and they were like, "Oh God, are you kidding me? Like, have you got the right coat on? Have you got the right coat on for the next shot?" And then after that, there was the sheer horror of it. But then also after having done the shot again, got everything right with the wardrobe, they then had the camera lens was blurry for whatever reason, and Peter had to go to the crew and to the guys. Peter Jackson had to go and say, "I'm really sorry, guys. I wish I was joking," because they were like, "You're joking. You're joking." Yes. I wish I was, but we've got to do the whole thing again. So the scene we actually see is like the third of 3 days worth of takes for this scene, but they managed to recuperate the energy. I mean, this is a perfect.
And they really do sell it well. I think it's worth giving some credit to Ian, who is as Bilbo, obviously coming back severely aged and stuff, but I like that little twinkle in his eye though when he sees the boat and he's like, "I'm one more, another." What do you say? Like,
I'm really quite ready for another adventure.
I'm like,
it's really nice because
that's some Bilbo energy right there. I love that,
especially because he's still kind of like tweaking over the ring. I still wanted to see that ring one more time.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to a place of healing for that.
Go back to
exactly. It's that kind of lived experience. Everyone's had that with kind of elderly family members and just kind of like, just kind of humoring them for it a little bit as they're having a moment. So it's kind of that touchstone for that. And brings back Bilbo.
It's a nice little curative to that dark moment, like him getting on the ship.
Exactly.
Also, and we get the context obviously too, like the elven rings have faded because you can see Gandalf and Elrond and Galadriel. You could see it clearly on their fingers and stuff, indicating that the energies left them, which again, good tie back to like once that one was destroyed, the rest would follow.
The willing sacrifice they made and the final diminishing of their people, stepping away and leaving the world as it were to the lands of men. And obviously the goodbye,
and then the hobbits have to
they weren't expecting
depart.
It.
Again, I have not cried at this movie, but oh my
Likewise.
God, like the theater.
Well, I watched it with
of crying.
I watched it with Tash and her sister once a few years ago, and they were both bawling their eyes out. I was like, don't get me wrong, it's sad, and I don't begrudge anyone who cries it, but I've cried at other things, but this has never been it.
In that theater. Like they were all crying,
sobbing.
They've been through so much together, and like this group of this group of like 4 hobbits, like you've followed their journey and stuff, and like the closeness and the camaraderie after going through so much, and the fact that that he is saying goodbye, it's heartbreaking.
That's really the key to it. You feel like you've been on a journey with these characters. I mean, if anyone's ever marathoned the 3 films together, extended editions, which I do not recommend. I finally got talked into it a few years ago with some friends, and regretted it.
It's an effort.
it's a wonderful experience to say you've done it, I suppose. But they are not at their best when you watch them all in one go. They can't be. But you feel like even just having watched them in a few days' time, you feel like you've been on a journey. I mean, these are long films just from that alone, but also they cultivate that sense of that ebb and flow of the strain and the true burdens of the task, both for the Fellowship as a whole, but also specifically for Frodo, very well. Like they've really spent the time to make every film feel like it's an effort, a real task to complete.
I would just like to reference this. I don't remember. I obviously don't remember who said it, but I saw a comment on a YouTube video for the Return of the King ending, and it actually said, not many films can earn their "the end" sign at the end of the credits, but this is a trilogy that earns the end as it appears. I'm like, something about that. Like, I think that kind of say what you want about like how the endings were like shot and stuff, but the fact like after going through all of these and that the end finally comes up, like you feel like it's earned it,
100%.
So
and it's very well put.
Give a little shout out to that.
Yeah, exactly. That's very well put. Very few do earn it. And especially particularly after, because we get another fade to black at the Grey Havens. We're back to the Shire again as Sam arrives to kind of go into his.
I like that it ends on Sam though, honestly.
Well, it needs to be in the Shire, doesn't it? You can't. You can't not do it there. And that Hobbit hole and the Hobbit hole in the ground. There lived the Hobbit. It's completes a circle. The world has been righted. The journey can now close. You can now go. It's tying into the experience of Tolkien.
Him and his family too. This is what he was like fighting for. This was the future that Sam was like fighting for from the get go, and the fact that he and Rosie, they have the kids now, and this beautiful it's just. It all comes full circle. It's fantastic.
There's a part of me that prefers the younger version of me that didn't know that eventually he too goes across the sea. Because like this ending, like when it really is a goodbye, like a real goodbye.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just like it's so powerful, like
and there's solace.
Love it.
I completely agree, but there's solace in the fact that obviously he's a pensioner at that age. He's lived his full life. His family are all living on it. So it's not like he goes in a few years.
That's almost silly in itself.
Rosie's passed away and stuff.
So he does get that full life, and like you said, Rosie's passed away. So he still gets that full life in the Shire. But I agree. I would have had him personally passing the Shire and just yes, he's a ring bearer. Yes, he's one who should get the voyage, etc. But it doesn't matter. I think it fits the story better that he stays here, and that's all we need to know. Because this could have faded to black and then faded back up again, and then Sam's old and going to the Grey Havens, and then sailing off with the rest of them with Legolas and Gimli, who also go. Gimli's the only dwarf who ever gets to pass because Legolas gets to invite him. And obviously exemplified by the fact that he got Galadriel's Silmarillion representation. So
there you go.
That's basically the appendices of the book, isn't it? It's all little wrap ups because there are many endings in the book as well.
I mean, this is I love the movie. I love all these movies. I don't know what more to add,
I mean, if you haven't gotten a good view of our opinions at this point after these 3 videos, I think we can all safely say that we are big fans of this series, and it's still, despite what minor gripes we may have, we still definitely would say that it's an experience everyone should have at some point. Whether you're a hardcore fantasy, or Tolkien enthusiast, I think there really is something in this trilogy for everybody, no matter what. And that really speaks to just the power of not only this specific brand of filmmaking, but filmmaking in general. The fact that you can maybe not necessarily be so keen on a particular genre or a particular story, but it's presented in a way that gets you engaged is not something really anyone could pull off with any significant ease whatsoever. So it's definitely worth seeing it just for that alone, because it's a period in filmmaking that really can never be repeated in the way that it did, or at least if it does repeat itself in the future, which it might, it won't be quite in the same way that like the original Star Wars trilogy is like something that'll never be repeated in the same way that it was, or like going back further, things like Flash Gordon and all that. Like these are all sort of, they're happy accidents that came together in a way because people are passionate, not just for the story, but for the art of filmmaking in and of itself. So if for no other reason, that is definitely, it's worth seeing for that.
Yeah, one hell of a cultural timepiece.
It's for sure. Completely agree. I think more than anything else, one of those reasons is just the amount of heart that went into it, because it's very, very like I think it's become increasingly rare to see something so heavily commercial as this, and so like time honored as like this is pretty much like a surefire sell to like a lot of people because it's proven IP and it's like a storied history and like a ready-made audience. But to the point where you now almost expect a studio to just spit out some crap. This isn't to say that you'll never see this level of heart and soul again put into the work, but it's rare. It's become very rare, and so it's a special thing when you do see it. Also, I know you were kind of given a recommendation. I have to reiterate, if you've made it this far and you haven't seen these movies, no idea what you're doing with your life at all. No idea how you
why are you listening to us?
How you ended up here. But amazing movies. Can't recommend them highly enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the greatest stories ever told, adapted in one of the best ways ever seen. And like you both said, the heart behind it is pretty undeniable. I said at the start of the trilogy, I said at the end, I've watched the behind the scenes of this almost as much as I've seen the actual film. That's pretty unique for me. I don't do that for films. It's not my area of interest. But watching these be made is like a labor of love. And it's a perfect example of where that kind of commercialism can meet art and create, wonders. So it's a cultural timepiece of its time. And I hope to see, craftsmanship of its type in the future, but we'll never quite see the same again. And there and back again. We've made it to the end. This has been our analysis of The Lord of the Rings, the film trilogy. I'm Callan, and I still don't have an outro.
This is Matt. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.
Evanova 95. Evanova 95. We hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys later.
Goodbye.